I didn't sell out, son. I bought in. Keep that in mind.
Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 252. This is Carl, and I'm joined by two fantastic guests, which I very much appreciate both of your gentlemen's time. Dave, also known as Mini Wargaming Dave or Chaos Dave or some other Dave.
Hola, amigo.
And Adam Loper, thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
It is. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your guys' time. I know you guys are much busier than I am in this space, so... before I get started, let me just quickly throw out to our Patreons. This show is sponsored by none other than Adon Tejada. These names are randomly drawn out of our Patreon subscribers. Adon, who used to be part of the show, can't be any longer because he's working for the man, and but he still supports Patreon, so appreciate that. And Sean Morgan, thank you guys so much. And we're part of the Goonhammer Media Network, so you can check us out at media.goonhammer.com for more shows and information. And so the reason I have brought these two illustrious guests onto the show is because I wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of growing influence of online content in our hobby. And I mean, this is honestly, we're probably recording this episode 5 years too late. You know?
Maybe.
It's grown. I don't know if it's reached a peak, but man, there's some stuff we've never seen before going on that's just fantastic. And all of us on this podcast right here have been involved in this for quite some time. I mean, there was a point where I was going, are podcasts even relevant at this point anymore? Should we just be on YouTube? I'm still enjoying what I'm doing, so we're sticking with it. But I wanted to talk to you guys about what's good about it, what's maybe bad about it, what we think maybe could be improved, and kind of how you guys approach it and what your thoughts are. So we'll get into all that. But first, it's going to be a little bit different, kind of elite choice section here. I wanted to throw out from our community here, Alex Thompson and his Deathcore of Krieg Commander on a Horse. Alex has this. First off, this box set is insanely cool looking. Thank God it wasn't Talarn, because I've always said I won't do IG unless they're Talarn, and if they come out with those in plastic, I'm in trouble. But Alex has done an amazing job on this model. It's just beautifully painted and very quickly painted, and I love the color schemes. And one of our temporary co-hosts, Campbell McLaughlin, is also doing some Deathcore Krieg stuff, and he's going to knock it out of the park too. But great job, Alex. Did you guys have anything from your community you wanted to throw out there at this point, or you good?
I don't really do a lot of, like, I know some communities will do things where they've got people that send in stuff they've been working on and things like that and go back and forth. I have a Discord for the Patreon folks and people share things there. But I guess I don't have anything specifically that I can think of off the top of my head, especially nothing necessarily that I guess other people could really see unless they're part of the Patreon and all that kind of jazz.
Well, you can send me a picture later. But
sure, good point.
Your Patreon is tied to, your Discord's tied to your Patreon in your particular case.
Yeah, I've got like a level that's known as Uncle Adams or regulars, and then that way there's the Patreon. And the main reason, honestly, is because I don't have time to really admin another thing, And if it's because I have people ask all the time, and people like, oh, well, do you have a public Discord? And I'm like, I don't, because it's just it's you have to kind of draw a line a little bit, and the discussion is, I think, a little bit more interesting. Not interesting is the right word. It's a little bit more directed. Let's say that, when the people are, being there on purpose
in real time, and you get that price point kind of cuts off a certain amount where you're just like, look, if you're really coming in here, then you must really want to be in here. If you're
exactly. You're not just there to troll, probably.
Yeah. Dave, how about you? You're all over everything.
I think that's the challenge. That's the issue, is that it's the focus is. You said anything from the community, which is funny. how anecdotally you're talking about a submitted image. Because I recently made a video called Rate My Paint, where I scrutinized one of my own paint jobs.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
And so, I get over 100 responses, emails, not just comments, but emails of people sending images in. And so it's like immediate overwhelm of, oh no.
You asked for it.
I asked for it. Like, no, I asked for it. So I don't typically do that. I haven't done that in a long time. And so, and in true, content creator fashion, I've done nothing with it since.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting. We'll talk more about the social media aspect of this later, but like we have a very successful Facebook group, but it's legitimately the only thing holding me to Facebook at this point. Like I kind of want to close my account. I've closed out a bunch of other accounts. I felt like it hasn't been real healthy for me and for maybe our country or others, and so I'm kind of just like, maybe I need to step back from this a little bit, but I really don't want to lose that connection I have with people. And so, again, I mean, I miss the old days of bulletin boards.
Oh yeah. No,
forums.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was thinking actual like real
BBSs.
BBSs back in the day. A friend of mine and I in high school ran a BBS for a while, and his parents' second phone line, it would only be up at night. That's how old I am. So it's I like Discord. I do.
Yeah.
The only downside to Discord, I think, for some folks is the fact that it's very siloed. It's hard to just like, you could just go to Bolter and Chainsword. You could just go to, Daka Daka once you know about it. It's hard to like just show up at a Discord without kind of knowing, because it's like not just like attached to a name. You can't just Google search it. You kind of have to know if you know, kind of thing, which is interesting and does keep out people that are maybe just there, bad actors that are just there to just cause trouble. But it also does make it difficult if you just want to go check things out. So
I think it also, there's something about it that forces you to a little bit more, I think, connect with people. Like you're in real time conversations with people. It feels a little more personal on a connection level to me.
Initially, I was very like weird about the whole, it's like ICQ back in the day. It just keeps constantly going. There's not like a different page for this and a different, for every different conversation. You still have in many places a lot of different, what do you call them? The different channels and stuff like that. So you're going to talk about this here and this there, but it's still generally kind of in a long thing. And I think that does sort of, I think it does help the conversation to some degree as well. When conversations kind of morph from place to place, as opposed to just die out in the specific, conversation block or whatever.
Dave,
I find there's a compromise for sure with the, because it's more protective, so to speak, where you have to, as you said, you have to know how to get in some cases, you need an invite link or what have you. But that comes with an inherent barrier to entry to that community. But once you're in that community, it is more potent.
Stickier, I think, a little bit.
Stickier. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And it becomes its own, it breeds its own life. It's almost like a neural network, so to speak. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, listen, what have you guys been working on lately, like hobby wise? Now, I know that Adam, you kind of steer away from Warhammer 40K and look more towards kind of independent games nowadays, especially since Kill Team hasn't. See, I pay attention to your show, especially since Kill Team isn't really your jam, the new version of it. So what are you working on these days?
I mean, I still, from time to time, Lord knows, do paint GW stuff because I just have so much of it anyway. I might as well be doing something with it. But also, just kit bashing and doing fun stuff for, like you said, other kind of indie stuff. It's gonna be very interesting to see what happens with Warcry this summer. I'm really wondering whether they're going to come out with a third edition, because it's due. If you can do math and count to 3, it's due. But they haven't talked about it. I was looking just recently on Warhammer Community. They have literally not used the word Warcry, I don't think, since September. So, I don't know. But what I've been doing lately has been Trench Crusade. I've been painting it both like offline, as it were, but also I stream on Twitch twice a week, and I've been painting that recently. Just previous to that, I was working on BattleTech. I'm not super interested in the main BattleTech game, BattleTech Classic, as they call it these days. But Alpha Strike, which is the more kind of skirmishy, slightly streamed down version, really kind of lit a fire under me. And I painted like the Alpha Strike starter box comes with like 13 mechs. I painted all those up, bought some more, started painting all those. And I'm nearly done probably with that for a while. But like I said, I've been working on Trench Crusade. I picked up 2 different factions during the Kickstarter, the Trench Pilgrims, which are a church faction, and the Heretic Legions, which are a hell factor or whatever, faction. And so I was going to do Heretic Legions first, and then my good friend Sam Lenz, master painter Sam Lenz, all of a sudden just started kit bashing Heretic Legions. So I was like, all right, well, then I'll do some Trench Pilgrims. And I did a video a couple weeks ago about painting rust on the big Anchorite shrine.
I saw that.
Love the way it turned out, but it's also just an astounding model anyway. So I'm going to have 10 models when I'm finished. They're all built, they're all primed, they're all based, all that kind of stuff, and they're in progress. I was actually this morning streaming and painting some of the Stigmatic Nuns. Yeah, that's what I was working on. So
I was talking to Dave Taylor earlier. Mm-hmm. He's got an interview at the end of this show about his 28 collected Kickstarter that's going on right now.
I backed that, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it ended. I think it just ended.
It ends Monday.
Oh, okay.
This should release with one day for people to hear about the interview. Mm-hmm. But then he'll have a follow up pledge thing. But we talked a lot about Trench Crusade. Trench Crusade's something that's fascinating to me. I just for me, it's like can I do another game at this point? I'm really so all in.
Sure,
it's hard for me to deviate. Dave, what have you been working on? Let me guess. Ravaged Star.
Well, that's a big moving train with a lot of parts, and so that's the process of getting that underway also has a life of its own with multiple people involved. And so, on a more personal note, there's other projects that I have been working on. One of which is Trench Crusade, actually. Yeah. So it's funny you should mention that, Adam. I myself am more of a Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent kind of guy.
There's some really interesting models in that set too.
Yeah. I like the Praetor. I love the Hunter of the Left-Hand Path with the eyeballs out of the cloak. When you're delving into that realm of extreme grim dark, kind of it kind of visits the recesses of the mind that don't necessarily ever get spoken or talked about or even seen, anywhere, especially not in a tabletop setting.
Yeah.
And so it's quite cathartic to be a deviant and just, yes, I love the look of that grotesqueness. I want that.
And it's so interesting. It's so interesting that they go from like one end to the other within literally just only 6 factions between the Principality of New Antioch, which just looks like a bunch of English guys in heavy armor standing around, you know what I mean?
Very clean.
Yeah. And then you go to these, to the Seven-Headed Serpent stuff. It is just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. That guy's got a mouth coming out of the back of his arm. I don't know what's going on. It's just like, exactly. Yeah.
And so it's incredible. So I as well am working on that in terms of like, because I consider hobby time more than just the physical act of painting minis or looking at the minis. Hobby time is just interest in general, awareness, spending time looking at things, reading things, because I think of everything through the lens of how can I make content about this?
Yeah,
I can't help it. I'm now wired that way.
Yes,
and so true to form, I did make a video about Trench Crusade, and instead of how to paint this model or how to do that, that's not the direction I go. The direction I go is, okay, I'm just going to raw express my thoughts and feelings on the things here and kind of capitalize on the reactionary nature that I am. And so I'm just people who are interested in kind of tuning in and hearing what I have to say about it, then cool, we're in good company. And then you'll know how awesomely grotesque I think this is. And if you feel the same, then we're all in good company. And so that's Trench Crusade, and I'll be making a lot more content. I love the fact that you're making videos about it, that you're covering it, and that other creators are too. I think it's fantastic. And then also Gundam, so complete 180 switch.
Everybody's talking about that online right now.
It's Louise's fault, right?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
she's like, Dave, have you Gundam yet? I'm like, why would you ask me a question like that? Why would you open that can of like, why? And then of course the bias is like, why? That looks like Tau. I don't want to look at that. Get that out of here. And so, and then she's like, oh, but I also don't like Tau. Oh, really? Right. See. And then she's like, but Gundam's different. And then she explained all the reasons why it tickles her brain, and I couldn't help but be sold on the idea of the snap fit, the push foot nature of the. And so I got 3 sets, which is perfect because I put them together with my boys, and they're loving it. It's very straightforward to just clip off the sprue and assemble, and then look at the articulation of the limbs. And wow, was it incredibly satisfying to just do that over the course of a week, every evening for about an hour.
It's so interesting to see the way that stuff works in comparison to GW plastics that are of roughly the same size and everything like that, but very frequently 4 times the price. I've only ever owned one Gundam, and I was at it was like during lunchtime with my old job, and we stopped at a Hobbytown USA, and this particular Hobbytown USA, every one of them is different, it seems. They all have different stuff and whatever. This one was just mostly Gundam. It was crazy. And so I never really messed with that stuff, and I was walking around. This is pre-pandemic, and I'm walking around looking at stuff, and the GW part of my brain is looking at this model. I'm like, well, this is nice looking. It's a cool model. I like it. Probably $60, $70, somewhere in there. It was $14.
Yeah.
And I was like,
what?
Well, why is that? And I literally bought it because I wanted to figure it out. And I was thinking about at some point making a video going, why are these so cheap and so cool in comparison to this? And I mean, Louise eventually got there, which is good because, ideas are useless, but execution is actually really important. So I'm glad that she went down that road. But it is very interesting to see. And I'm not, like, I've had a lot of people ask me about that new Gundam miniature game that's going to be coming sometime this year or next. I'm not. There's something wrong with me. I have like literally no interest in anime. I never really have. My wife and I watched Cowboy Bebop all the way through. Mm-hmm. I've fallen asleep twice trying to watch Akira. I'm just a bad person, and I'm okay with that. It's fine. But it's just, so I've never gotten into it because I was interested in that. For me at the time, I looked at this model, I'm like, why is this so cheap and so cool? I don't understand it. And I'm not talking about the aesthetic, but just the way it goes together and the snap fit nature and all that jazz. So I think it is interesting. And, and you kind of touched on this, Dave, this stuff and Carl, this stuff kind of goes in cycles within the, community. Exactly. But not only the community, but also the community of content creators as well.
Right. I mean, I think, for the most part, I tend to not listen to other 40K podcasts and that kind of thing because I don't want to have my direction influence so much from them. I want to kind of chart my own path but I mean, there's a few I watch. I watch both of your guys' stuff, obviously. I listen to 40K Badcast just because I'm great friends with those guys and I enjoy the product they're putting out. It's significantly different from what I'm doing. So there's tends to not be crossover there. But recently I listened to a point they made, and it's kind of come up a couple times in my show because it was a really good point they made. But for myself, I went down a rabbit hole online when I discovered the Grimdark Compendium. And I've talked about this on my show. Mm-hmm. I was unaware of this previously, and I started watching some of their painting videos and how they were doing like this reductive technique where they would use these inks, effectively.
I've been watching his channel since before he renamed it. It used to be called Zaskascatoon.
Oh, is it? I didn't realize that.
I'm 98% sure it's the same channel because all of a sudden the Zaskascatoon, which I can't even say,
was gone.
That went away. And then all of a sudden there was Grimdark Compendium. Yeah. And then when they first announced those villainy inks and everything, I was like, all right, he was crowdfunding it himself. It wasn't a Kickstarter or whatever. He was just doing his own thing. So I was like, yep, I'm on board. And they're very, very interesting. As a person who's never got into oil washes, but does enjoy some enamels, they are definitely a vibe, as the kids say.
So you have them and you've used them. I just received the base set. Like I got the 6 or whatever base set, and I never had mineral spirits before, so I had to order mineral spirits. So I'm literally about to start playing with them. I'm very curious what your takeaway was from.
So they're very different than standard enamel washes. Standard enamel washes, like AK Interactive, I guess, and I'm more of a fan of Ammo by MIG, but the streak and grime type things. The way I've always worked with them has always been to either put it on heavy with a brush and then wait for it to mostly kind of dry and then start wiping it away, or just airbrush it on and just you look like you've ruined the model, because the model is now dark brown, and then you start wiping it away. And the way I do it honestly is, if I don't wait super long, I start with a t-shirt, like you use an old t-shirt.
Oh, interesting.
Don't use a paper towel, because it will just rip and stick. And it's terrible. So you want like an old t-shirt, some sort of jersey material, or other type of cloths that you can get, from the hardware store or whatever, but just old t-shirts are fine. And then I wipe away a lot and then go back in with like finer stuff and a little bit of mineral spirits if I really want the face to be less affected and things like that. But yeah, it's just a fun process. I would definitely tell you to practice on something first, but just to get the hang of it. But yeah, it's otherwise. And the thing is that their stuff is a lot thinner. Yeah. So when you put it on, you don't just slop it everywhere and then wait for it to dry and wipe it away. You put it in many situations, you kind of use it almost a little bit like a wash that you can wait for it to dry and then remove. And the thing that's interesting, I did not know this, and I think I've got it right. Enamel washes can always be reactivated with mineral spirits.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be dry for weeks, and then you can still reactivate it with mineral spirits. Whereas oil washes, once they are dry, and you can't reactivate them.
Interesting.
So because I'm always, for the longest time, I've been like, why are there these two things that seem nearly identical? And as it turns out, it's partially that. But there's probably other things as well that your listeners know. But that's the most recent thing I heard that I thought was really interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give it a try. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm trying to go, I like their grim dark approach, and it kind of feeds right into the Inquisitor 28 and the 28 collected thing that Dave was doing. It just kind of all came together at the same time, where I was like, let me give this a try and see how it works out. So we'll see.
Texture's a big deal too.
Yeah.
And I have been really starting to love working with some of the slightly micro textured paints for the effects paints from Army Painter, like the rust ones that I did for that anchorite shrine that I did for that video for Trench Crusade.
Yeah.
Like there's these tiny little micro particles of rust. So what I've been doing now lately, on and off, sometimes if I'm like, I don't care if this is rusty or not, I just need it to be slightly textured, I'll stipple that stuff on and then prime the model afterwards and stuff like that. That's not what I did with that anchorite shrine, but in other situations since, like even on terrain, I need this to be slightly textured over here, and then just stipple on some. You can use whatever color you want. There's with the fresh rust and the dark rust and all that kind of jazz. Right. But yeah, it works out really nice. I keep wanting those guys over at Army Painter to just make a line of textured paints, and I think that they're probably in progress. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those guys. All right, let's do this. I want to take a short break. Let's come back and let's start talking about the impact of media on what we're doing, and in particular, online content and that kind of thing. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. As I said before the break, I wanted to start talking about kind of the growing influence of online content here. And in particular, I think there's a lot of positives. And I struggled with how I ordered this, because I don't want to end on like a downer note, and we won't, but we will talk about some of the drawbacks too. But initially I wanted to talk about, from my perception, what do I think are the really good things? And right off the bat, like learning how to play various games. I mean, even for board games, at this point in my life, I don't want to read an instruction manual on a board game. 9 times out of 10, if my wife and I are going to start a new board game, we go online and we go, let's watch, how to play, and then we get the basics, and then we go from there.
I've found that either being taught how to play by a person who knows how, or watching somebody else play, like if you read the book, you'd be like, it's not. Right. But then you watch somebody, or you try it out, or you do a demo. When you go back and read the book again, everything bemes clear. Yep. And I don't know if that's just a human nature thing with brains, or if it's just me. But I
think you have context. You have context at that point.
Yeah.
That's right.
For me, Legions Imperialis was like reading stereo instructions. I was like, I can't even wrap my head around this. I played one game, like 2 turns into it. I was like, oh, got it. okay,
Yeah. You stumble through, and then it makes more sense.
Yeah. And like you said, I played with somebody who had shown it before. I've kind of avoided doing like how to play type of things. I think there's other channels that do it and probably honestly do it better, especially YouTube channels. But I do find like guides and tutorials, and in particular, painting tutorials have had, I think, a massive impact. Dave, recently you had a guy come to your studio and you were judging his army that he's collected over the last, I think he's 13 years or something to that effect.
Yeah. Over
The
a decade.
lawyer?
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's interesting because 13 years ago, and this is what, as I was watching that video, this is what I was thinking. And you could even see when you videoed his table, you could see different quality of paint jobs across all of his units. And of course, I mean, he had like an entire entire company.
Yeah. Chapter.
Basically. Excuse me. At the beginning of that project, he had very, very different skills. He got better, but also, man, when I started painting 40K, if we had the painting tutorials that we have today, things would have been a lot different.
Well, and the hobby tools, you had to make your own washes when I first started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden washes were something that you could get from like Games Workshop and whatever. And then you had more choices and more colors and everything. And then you start getting into contrast and speed paints and effects paints and all this kind of stuff. And, now you're seeing people doing a lot of stuff with, enamel washes like we were just talking about. These things also really, like, a lot of times these things come up and get popular because they do good work. And they used to call, what was it before? It was Agrax Earthshade. Delvin Mud. Yeah. They used to call that talent in a bottle.
Yeah, liquid talent.
You just used to be able to like just put it on there and like, well, look what it did. It was the same type of thing when you used to use Minwax. You know what I mean? You used to go to the hardware store, get some Minwax, dip your models, and be like, look at all the detail it popped out. And you're like, yeah, but now it's like shiny. You can see yourself in the surface. And you're like, well, I'll put some matte varnish on it. It'll be fine. And then you never did. And it's just there's a lot of techniques that have come along, through videos, but also a lot of the tools have gotten better too.
I think that there's so much choice now. Anything you can possibly imagine, any tabletop game, any miniature experience that you could think of, there's someone somewhere making some kind of content about it, whether it's educational content, whether it's entertaining content, short form or long form, written or video or podcast. So any sort of kind of media you can think of related to anything it's pervasive, right? So it's like, and especially if something's new and popular, it just kind of spreads and it trickles into all the different mediums of communication. And it's focusing on the positives for a minute. It makes it so no matter how unique your interests are, there's something in someone for you. That you can find your people much easier than you could 5, 10, 15 years ago. In fact, there are your people. It's just a matter of search for the thing, and then you'll find the community surrounding that, the potent community surrounding that, which is wonderful, especially in today's age where separation seems to be a
theme.
Loneliness and kind of like social interaction is not quite what it used to be, and there is a growing epidemic of mental illness that associated itself with that, and so it's very good. You have a lot of options for outlets, and even for people who aren't necessarily overt or extroverted in that sense, where they can easily just go and find people. If it's hard for you to find people, it's much easier for you to find people now.
This is a good point, and kind of leads into the community growing and building piece I kind of had up next. I mean, whenever I get involved in something, like I've always been the kind of person that's like, cool, I'm doing this little thing. I want to get involved in it larger. I want to be involved with other people being involved with this, whether this was and I've told this story on my show a couple of times, but you know, I wanted to get into RC car racing ever since I was a little kid, and it was super expensive. And then I had the money to do it, there was a hobby store nearby. They would race, like organized racing and all this stuff, and I was like, oh, this is just like when I was a kid. I went and bought and assembled one of these cars. I got the insurance that you have to race these things because you could damage other. I mean, it's a legitimate organization. Wow. I go over and I'm like, not ready to race, but I'm like, I'm going to go introduce myself to these people, get to know them. I walk over and they couldn't have been less welcoming. They were just, and I just decided I do not want to do this with these folks. Like it only took like that one thing. And so I was so disappointed, and on their forum, you know, they were like, oh, we need to get more people into this. I'm like, well, let me tell you why you're not, you know, and I kind of let them know. And I was like, I'm done with this. And that's when I found 40K. And for the most part, the people that I would run into, and I was playing tournaments at the time. Never plays better in middle of the pack, but I got to meet so many people. The friends I have today, I met through this hobby. And when Jeff and I started this program, it wasn't, hey, can we make something and become known? Like that was actually the least of our interest. It was, we think we can provide some kind of fun and entertainment, and it sounds like fun to do, and maybe we'll get to meet additional people. And it's taken me all over the world, Australia, Europe. I mean, I've met people I've met just online through this show as a result, and are good friends with, and my wife has become friends with their wives and that kind of thing. So for me, the community piece of it was so important, was so important to me. And I really wanted to bring down any kind of barriers to, if people come up to me, as you guys know, when people come up to you at Adepticon or LVO or whatever, and they're like, hey, I just want to say hi and I love the show. And it's fantastic. Even more so when people, and I'm sure you both receive this too, you get an email or something who's like, somebody was like, I was going through a really tough time and your show and your thing helped get me through it. And it's just like, man, I never thought to have that kind of impact. It was more about just becoming a bigger part of what I enjoyed.
I started the channel almost 12 years ago because I wanted to teach myself video production. Like that was literally that. I was not out to teach people. I was not out to, you know,
do you want to teach relationship.
It to me? Yeah, well, I mean, that was just the situation. Is I was like, I've got a background in photography. Yeah. I should try to figure out how to do editing and do some video production. What should I make videos about? Well, I have this hobby. It's like when you're a kid and you see those kids in like art class, like in, you know, grade school or whatever. And there's kids that are like, the teacher's like, here, draw some stuff. And they're like, I don't know what to draw. But then you got other kids who are drawing race cars because they love race cars. And you got other kids who are drawing dinosaurs because they love dinosaurs. So I was like, well, I'm a war gamer, so I'm going to, you know, make videos about that. And that was the initial plan, was just literally to just get better at video production. And then it was a couple years in, so probably around 2015, when I decided the mission of the channel, frankly, should be about getting people into the hobby, which I've always stuck with. And I know that people who've been listening for a long time are like, well, but sometimes you say things, you know, that you've said before. And I'm like, still trying to get people into the hobby. Like I'm not like, I can't take things and go, well, now we're moving up to intermediate level because then we're leaving people behind to some degree. Point. And so that's kind of a thing. So my content, I think people sometimes start to outgrow my content because they're like playing, if they're playing in tournaments and stuff like that for 40K or whatever, I got nothing to talk about for that.
That's not really your target audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they may have, but a lot of them, I walk around, you know, at conventions and see people playing tournaments, and I'm shooting footage, and people will come and say, hey, you know, I got into the hobby because of your videos, and now I'm here playing in this tournament.
That's got to be the best. Yeah. That's got to be the best because
it happens. We were just in Las Vegas, I don't know, a month ago, and it happens constantly, and it is the best. It is really nice to be able to just like have people be like, the reason that I'm doing this is because I started looking on YouTube and I found your videos, and so that's mission accomplished on my end.
For me, it was, and I'm going to go to you in just a second, Dave. But for me, it was, we set out. we weren't tournament players. We were like, well, what value do we bring? And so we were like, we want to make these people feel like we have a very robust group of people that play. We want to make you feel like a part of our group, like the things that we enjoy. We want to help you enjoy those too. And so when people come up to me and they're like, I really feel like, you know, the funniest interaction I had with somebody once was they came up and they were like, oh, look, I'm working on this and I'm doing this. And they're showing me at Adepticon what they're painting. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm working on this. They're like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, I don't really have anything else to share. I've put it all out there.
Yeah.
Dave, I started following you. Like somebody had pointed me to when you were doing the Space Marine, you know, the adventures of your Chaos Space Marine. And I just thought it was hysterical. What drove you to kind of go down this path? You and I guess Matt to go down this path.
So the initial point of the videos on the YouTube channel was to drive traffic to the online store.
Okay.
So just an advertising platform.
So it was a store initially, and you were just like, hey, we'll do these things and maybe generate some interest in the store.
Yeah, generate interest and do subscriber appreciations, do contests and painting contests and kind of community involvement stuff. And hey, let's take a look at the cool paint jobs that were submitted this month, and let's play a game and show off the game, and let's collect some new armies and show off those armies and let people know they're available to buy in the store. And so that was the initial start of it. And then it evolved into, we no longer sold the minis, but we still were making the content. And so the content itself became the product.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Like, at what point did it like reach this tipping point? I remember Matt putting up a video, very frustrated with the way Games Workshop was operating and how they're making it difficult on independent retailers. I remember watching all that, but at a certain point, you guys switched from maybe we let the store go and we focus on this. Like, what was that tipping point for you?
So the tipping point was GW did change their policy where because we're located in Canada, we couldn't sell outside of Canada and we couldn't sell online. It was mail order. So it's like two ways in which we were cut at the knees. And so it's like, okay, well, we can't sustain ourselves. We're barely sustaining ourselves before. So we're going to have to go out of business. But we do have this membership, which here's kind of a fun anecdote. We started the mini Wargaming Vault before Netflix. And so it's like, that's how old we are in terms of the digital space, which is weird to say out loud because it's like, you know, it's been around forever. And at first it was actually it was education content. It was like, oh, here's painting tutorials. Here's a terrain CD on PDF. A CD, right? Like that. Who makes a CD, right?
I'm investing heavily in CD technology.
And then it switched to entertainment because it was just there was a broader. Well, to be fair, it was more fun. It was more fun to play games and to film ourselves playing the game.
Sure.
And then it just became more about that. And then the content was the product, which is just by being kind of, if you think of like the traditional, all right, here's a store, let's promote the store. And then there's no longer store. It's like, all right, what do we do? Well, we're going to promote ourselves making the thing that we're doing and then do that as long as we can. But it's shifted again. It's actually shifted back to it's now better to have product. It's been this way for a good decade or more or plus, where that's necessary in order to sustain because of the oversaturation of everyone everywhere having an ability to offer a subscription to support them,
right?
Whether it's an individual artist or it's a big streaming service or whatever, right? Because this is back when we were like the whole concept of a monthly payment to support content, other than certain adult sites, it wasn't really normal, right? And so
we'd like to announce our OnlyFans for the three of us.
When you said adult, I thought you mean like cleaning out your gutters. And taxes.
I'll tell you where my brain went right away.
But to what you were saying before, Adam, it was interesting because you were talking about when you shifted to, all right, going to make this new person, new hobbyist, new player friendly. just kind of diving into the weeds of the algorithm a little bit, because I'm personally completely obsessed when it comes to content creation, when it comes to analyzing the stuff, making things, storytelling, different types of content, different types of channels, building channels. And so for you, it makes total sense that the audience that you have built over the years is this is where you start.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect, it's like a place where you go, okay, start here. If you start here, no background knowledge is required.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to assume knowledge. Adam won't assume that you know things. He's just going to tell you, and it's great. You won't be frustrated because you're like, what does that mean? Okay, what is he talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, literally just getting used to not using jargon is a big part of that.
Retrain your brain. Oh,
exactly.
Yeah. And so it's fantastic. And it also, for anyone who wishes to make content, it is one of the best ways of continually ensuring that you have new audience. It's perpetual new audience because you're constantly bringing in new people.
Right. I mean, you get some people that grow out of it, but then you get new people who are coming in trying to figure out what's going on. So it is a situation where there's churn for sure, but it's generally, it ebbs and wanes for sure. You see times when things are going like great views, and sometimes when they're like, we have that, all of us with different, types of production, the different types of content, but all of that comes down to, in the long run, generally a net positive in my mind for the hobby and the people who are getting into the hobby. It's not so much that I'm trying to support the hobby. I am on kind of a secondary level, but really I'm trying to get people into a hobby. This is the one that I know, and it's good for people. I think it's meditative, it's stress relieving to go down and sit in their basement or sit in their extra room or sit on the edge of the dining room table or whatever and build little people and paint them and all that kind of stuff. You're focusing on stuff. You're working with your hands. That's the kind of thing that I'm really trying to foster in the long term. I want it to be non-altruistic for me a little bit, the wargaming hobby, because I want there to be more wargamers out there for me to like interact with. Exactly. So there's that too. But really, I mean, I could pivot at some time if I had to, or if I wanted to, or whatever, and be like, I'm gonna redo furniture from like from the Goodwill. You buy some stuff and then you strip it and you do all that kind of stuff. And again, it would be about kind of the same thing, but very different in the background.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought that up because you fill we each kind of fill a particular niche, and there's some overlap there. But honestly, Adam, I go to your channel to be like, well, what's going on in the independent scene? Like what?
And things have moved that direction for the channel over the last, let's say 5-6 years. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, like, listen, I'm 40K centric. Like that's my whole, anything in the 40K universe, but that's not to say I can't learn from other things and pull them into what I'm trying to do. So I always, go to your channel for, hey, what's going on, elsewhere. Let me pop my head up and I can look and see what's going on elsewhere. Dave, you and I sometimes approach content and topics in ways that aren't, and this is even one of them, that aren't really about the game so much as they are about the people around the game and the people involved in the game. And the other point I meant to make to Adam's thing was, you fill the niche that I wish there was for that RC hobby thing when I was trying to get into it.
Yeah.
Right. Like had I known, I would have saved so much time and energy, and I also would have met people and then, fostered that into real life. But Dave, you and I sometimes approach things like, sometimes I'm just talking about a game or the type of game we're playing. But I've seen a lot of content of yours lately that is coming around to, here's this mental health journey I've been on, or here is this physical fitness journey I've been on, or, hey, maybe your toxic positivity video recently hit me right in the heart, because I was like, listen, I'm a very positive guy just in general. But I also, and I think I made a comment even in there, like I know what you're saying. Like we can't be afraid to offer genuine criticism, especially if you say, hey, would you like some feedback on this? I think I can help you improve. So it's interesting that while we're talking about the game, we're also talking about what dances around the game a bit.
Yeah. And okay, so I love that you're bringing this up, because I've actually, like, I have found my niche. And so my niche isn't, I'm the best player, I'm the best painter, I'm an expert.
That's not
in
what
these
Doug
things.
Johnson says.
Well, he's self-proclaimed a big deal, right?
That's right.
I don't disagree with him to his face. And so,
so anyway,
but yeah, so I found that I just genuinely like people, and I'm interested in. I'm super curious. I'm a super curious person by nature, and when I see a model that's converted, I want to know why they did it. I want to know, like, where they were and what caused them to put that orc head on the Space Marine body, and so, like, that to me is equally, if not more, interesting than the lore and everything kind of surrounding the thing itself. And that is something I just more naturally connect to. And so I find that it manifests itself in the content that I'm making. As you say, it's like a case in point, the recent video that I made about Nathan's chapter of Space Marines. It wasn't the chapter of Space Marines. It wasn't this is the composition of the 1,000 Space Marines, and here are the different battalions, and here are the different units. Because I could have gone that direction in, this is, if you want to know what this is what this is. Like, I would be actually a poor person, because I would miss details and I would get stuff wrong.
Sure.
And then there would be a million people in the comments like, oh, that's not that.
Correcting you.
Oh,
absolutely.
Like, it'd be insane. In fact, just as in a social experiment, I should do it. Be like, this is a comprehensive guide to what this, and I will get every detail. And,
see everything wrong about it.
Open the floodgates.
It would blow up. It would be the most viewed.
Right. But to me, the more interesting thing is, okay, let's talk about Nathan for a second.
Yeah.
I want to know why he, like, what possesses a man to collect 1,000 Space Marines and to paint them, batch paint by 50. Like, okay, I understand obsession. I don't care what the obsession is. If you're talking about obsession manifested, especially in the realm of miniatures, like, okay, I'm listening. Yeah, tell me, tell. I want to know. And because I'm interested in that, it's like the adjacent details just happen to be in the realm of miniatures. And so I love movies just as much, if not more, than minis, right? So if I had another YouTube channel, it would probably be on movies, and it would be video essay type of stuff, and it would be delving into actors and that sort of stuff. And it would be around the people. It'd be like, all right, why did this person choose that role, and how did they get that role? And it would be delving into all that stuff.
I think it makes sense that you are like GW is already focusing on the lore and the models and the stuff, and they don't really focus a ton
on the people,
and can't really, because there's so many, but they can't necessarily focus as much on the people. So being able to tell the stories of the people who make these kind of crazy things, especially something as big as like an entire chapter, or even just a company or whatever, that is, I think, people, human interest is definitely a thing that's been around for a long time in reporting and news and content creation, and it does make a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And this is why when people are taking photos of games they're playing, whether 40K or whatever, a lot of times the photos I'm more interested in are the photos of the people playing, not the photos of what is on the table per se. I'm kind of interested in, do they seem to be having fun? Are they enjoying themselves? When my buddy Jeff was moving away from the area, he originally started the show with me. We had a big game day, and I was playing a game with somebody, I don't even remember who, and we were laughing and just having a great time. And I remember Jeff was kind of falling out of 40K at that point, and he said to somebody next to him, he was like, I wish I had as much fun playing this game as Carl seems to have, and it was just like, yes, like, I'm more interested in talking about the feelings it evoked from me in playing, and what it's doing to other people. Hence, let's make you a part of our gaming group. It's really about that feeling of inclusion and being, experiencing things the way we experience them.
When I watch battle reports, and I don't watch them religiously, but I do like to watch them. I watch them sometimes for I'm looking for certain things, because I've done 2.5 battle reports on my channel. I did 2 battle reports about the old 2018 version of Kill Team, and those were a trip. And then I was like going to start doing a battle report every single month. And the last one that I did, I was going to do one per month, and so I did one in January and then one in February of 2020. And then it was March, and then I was like, okay,
well, that's
yeah. But I did do kind of a half of a battle report with my good friend Matt from. You remember Wreck Age back in the day? Yeah. So
Dave Taylor got me into it right as those were impossible to find.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did a battle report with Matt. He came up from Chicago, and we did that. And it was my very first ever battle report. And I just it's his game. Like, he wrote it, him and the other guy, his partner. And I just slaughtered him. Like there was, we didn't even get to a second. Like, it was supposed to be like a 3-part series, and I destroyed everything in the first game. And then it was, it was the best game I've ever had in my life. Like, I couldn't stop rolling like high, and it was just crazy. And we were, we're drinking a little bit too. But the whole point is, the reason I started telling the story is when I watch battle reports, if they don't ever show the people at all in the battle reports, I immediately care less.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because I'm there to see, again, they make lots and lots of battle reports, and they're generally competitive players and things like that. Tabletop Tactics over in England. Yeah. The only ones of theirs that I ever used to watch was when it was Lawrence and Bone. Remember Bone, Ben? Like, the two of them, just the things going on between the two of them. Exactly. It was just hysterical. I didn't care how the play was going, but I was having I remember there was a time when I think Bone was gonna be able to do some sort of thing unless Lawrence rolled triple sixes or something like that. And he rolled the triple sixes, and then he looks up at Bone, and Bone's holding the camera, and then there's a jump cut, and Bone is outside walking away down the street, and Lawrence is following me come back. And it was
great. That's great stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And just so that that to me, the person aspect of it. But if it's just some hands and you never look up and see the people around or anything like that, to me it's a little bit less interesting, at least. But I know I'm not everybody.
Yeah, and Dave and I have both. I don't think you have, but Dave and I have both been on Play on Tabletop.
I haven't.
Somebody just posted a screenshot of me playing on Play on Tabletop in our Discord the other day. They said, "Oh, I was killing some time, and look who's on Play on Tabletop." I go, "Oh boy!" And at the end, he goes, "I've never seen anybody roll so many 2s," and I go, "Yep, yep, that's the story of my life." But likewise, I tend not to watch a lot of battle reports. It's just not my jam. I don't think it's particularly engaging content for me.
I think there's 2 different types. I think there's the type where you're oh, I'm learning about the game, and and that's fine. That's sometimes. I'm learning about a new game. But if you're playing 40K and it's a battle report and that's all you do on the channel, or the majority of what you do, and it's fine, then you're doing it probably to inform much more serious tournament-oriented players. Yes. And then there's people who are
definitely an audience for that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And then there's people who are just no, I'm doing this because it's a lot of fun, and we play different games all the time and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a wacky thing that we do with our friends. And those are very, very interesting in my mind as well. So, again, I don't watch tons of them, but lately, over the last year or so, I've been kind of ratcheting up what I've been watching, just trying to look for ideas and concepts and things like that, because I would like to do it again. I've been thinking about it for a little while now, about just doing some solo battle reports, because I am generally always available when you're available to be there. Yeah, exactly. Whereas other people, it's a little hard. You know what I mean? And there's so many different solo games. I mean, Vince and I have been making now games that can be played solo for 4 or 5, almost 5 years now. So there's something to be said for that as well, I think. And I think that doing it, kind of being interesting about it and everything like that, can be maybe more watchable.
I think sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to ask, when you say solo, do you mean single player?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you would record yourself playing the game
Mhm.
by yourself and kind of just talking out your process and maybe fighting against the AI mechanics of the game. And
generally, like in the solo play games, you've got an AI that's involved in some fashion, and so you're basically playing against, like in our most recent game, Death Wizards, you are the necromancer, and you have your undead minions, and you're fighting against the villagers and the paladins and the rangers and the heroes and that kind of stuff. And they are run by basically an AI. You've got a deck of cards, or you can just use the book. The book's got the information in there as well, and you can go, this is what's going on. And I think that type of thing would be very interesting as well. And I'm seeing people doing it, in small channels here and there, and I'm like trying to figure out a way to make it maybe a little bit more accessible and everything like that.
You have to figure out a way to kind of make that entertaining a bit. I don't know if you're familiar with a big role player as well. In Call of Cthulhu space, there's a guy named Seth Skorkowski who does fantastic videos. Take a look at what he's doing there, because he'll play different characters in the videos.
Sure.
There might be something there. But, but I think, kind of summarizing, I think for me, the best thing to come out of online content is connecting with people for me. And I probably get an advantage in that since I'm producing the content. So people gravitate towards coming to talk to me.
Sure.
But I've also facilitated other people meeting other people in this space, both online and in person at events. And that to me has been incredibly rewarding. That's been the most rewarding thing. What has been the most rewarding thing for each of you? Dave, for you, what's been the most rewarding thing about providing online content and seeing this growth?
I think for me, the most rewarding thing is seeing that things that were once thought impossible are not. So I guess that's a broad stroke way of saying, like, because of the amount of time spent making content and cultivating communities and meeting with people, which is fantastic, especially being an extrovert. Are you kidding me? Like I need people. So if there's an opportunity to do something, whether it's as simple as just playing a game with someone or making a game with someone, like in everywhere in between, it's this space has provided opportunity to do that. And so that starting out 18 years ago, that wasn't the thought. I wasn't thinking, I want to make miniatures, I want to make games. And it was just, I don't want to landscape anymore. So let's make some YouTube videos.
Fair enough.
Right? Like that's what it was. But now it's like, it's just organically grown into that. So it's the things that stimulate the brain now are much different. And so now every year there's more and more, there's more and more ideas, collaborations, and opportunity and growth. And it's provided a life of enriched experience that I never would have thought possible, given my particular background. Like there's, for no reason should a guy like me who's not educated in the traditional sense should be kind of doing what I'm doing. It's like this kind of like being a YouTuber is like the only thing that actually makes sense.
Got it. What about you, Adam?
I think that for me, the biggest, kind of like I was saying earlier, is when people come up and they say, hey, I got into this hobby because of, finding you on YouTube and watching your videos. I think that it has also given me like a chance to be able to create. I really can't imagine like not being able to create with, like, if I decided tomorrow for some reason, or if YouTube shut down, I'd be doing something else. I would figure out a way to create, I'd just all kinds of, I don't want to be just a person who sits and just lets creations hit me in the face. Like, right. I want to put some stuff out there. So that's been a big deal. The fact that 20 years ago, companies like NBC and CBS couldn't stream content to people in China, people in Jordan, people in like, Istanbul, like all at the same time. No matter what, they would have had to go through all these different satellites and do all this stuff and work with all these other and now you can, like, I used to sit in my dining room and just be like, okay, click. Now I'm talking to people all over the world. Like, that's something that's also, I think, really interesting about the live streaming space as well. So being able to kind of connect like that and get into people's lives a little bit and be able to have a good time doing it, and to get the feedback from people who are like, I appreciate, the thing you're doing, and you've taught me about this or that or the other thing. All of it is I think, good. And I'm glad for it.
I had never really considered, before we started, like even though I worked in the internet industry, like I hadn't really considered the reach of what we were putting out there. And then, I started looking and I'm like, oh, look, there's all these people from the UK. There's people from South Africa. There's people from all these locations downloading and listening to the show. I hadn't, up until that moment, I was like, who's this one guy in like this really,
weird that's country? Kind of become a thing that I do with the Every Other Sunday show. You generally, the show starts out very frequently and people are like, just sort of just in the chat, like where they're watching from, and stuff. And for whatever reason, it's also become a thing where we sort of talk about the weather, like, oh, it's rainy here in Scotland, and stuff like that. And it just becomes a thing. And then eventually you can get into like talk and chat and whatever. But just doing that and having people from countries that you don't think necessarily even know much about or do, like Brazil is getting bigger into miniatures, basically, but like, they're having to fight to do it because there's no distributors. There's there's almost no game stores. And so they're having to like kind of work and get like people get like a big order or they travel and they bring stuff back. And there's like all these kind of like, I don't want to say underground stuff, but sort of a little bit. And so that's interesting stuff that you learn. That's the other thing too, is that I am very, very grateful that it gives me so much to learn because I always like,
that's a good point.
If you want to get into content creation, but you don't like learning, you should not get into content creation, just straight up. It's not a good idea.
It is a lot more difficult than it seems. Like it seems like you just, hey, let's just talk on, but I mean, there was a ton of planning set up.
Yep.
We did an episode about the psychology of collecting this, and we have a psychologist in our audience who was like, hey, if you want, I'll join. We were like, yes, that would be amazing. And I always love when we do an episode and I walk away from it going, oh, I hadn't known that. Like that was very interesting to me. So I
think one of the biggest considerations is the consistency required.
Yeah.
As a content creator,
without a doubt,
because there's definitely the honeymoon phase of, oh, let's do all these things. Let's create all this stuff. But the lifestyle consideration, because it's like, okay, that's now who you are.
Oh yeah.
There's dedicated time, and it's not, most of it won't look as good as you want it to.
No.
in terms of the numbers that you get back, the amount of time you think things are going to take. There's outliers that come with consistency that, there's a survivor's bias when you create content and it does well, and you have this hope of the illusion that all of it will be that way, which is
and it's
not reality.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think knowing some of that stuff in advance is can arm a lot of people with, okay, well, if I just do the thing and figure out why I'm doing it, then that ultimately wins more than I will get views, I will get engagement. Like for you, Adam, we were like, I want to learn how to make, I want to practice my filmmaking, technical, get better at that stuff, editing. And it's like, that's a wonderful reason to do it, because then you'll just do it no matter the numbers, right?
You really have to, I think, to be successful, you were talking about consistency. I've put out a video every single Friday since September or October of 2015.
That's
like I've not missed one. And it becomes, I don't want to say a mania. I don't want to go that far, but it does become such a habit. It's like what I imagine being physically fit must be like. You know what I mean? Like where you're like,
it's what I imagine it must be like.
No matter what, how cold it is outside, you still get up and go to the gym on every day that you normally go. And for me, like, there's plenty of Thursdays I'm just like, ugh, good Lord, I don't want to edit tonight or whatever, that kind of thing. And it happens, but you just do it. And the thing is, you can't stop doing it. Like you can't, if you get into it, you're like, if you've just decided, no, I'm not going to do it this week, you'll find out all of a sudden on one day you're like, no, I got to do it now. I have to, because you know what I mean? Like you just like, it's Wednesday and you're like, dang it. And you know, you have to. So yeah.
There's a certain amount of self-discipline it takes.
Yeah. When I first started, I was doing it randomly. I was like, oh, there's a month in between videos, 2 weeks in between videos, 3 weeks between videos, and that kind of stuff. And when I started getting serious is when I'm like, I'm just going to do it every single Friday at the same time. Yeah. And I'm going to try to force myself to do that. And then you either keep doing it or you don't. And that's, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. When I saw the operation at Play on Tabletop and how they're editing stuff and how much film ends up on the floor, and
sure,
I'm sure you saw it too, Dave. I was just like, in the airport on the way home, I called Josh, and who is a photographer and videographer for a living, and I was like, no way, I wouldn't do it. No, too much work for me, for what it is, and they put out a stellar product, and it shows. But I think for $40K in 40 minutes. It's 40 hours to make 40K in 40 minutes. Like, it is a lot of work on their
Absolutely.
part.
Yeah.
So
that's a conservative 42.
Yeah.
It's often much more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad they're doing it.
And they're doing it well. And that's why when somebody's like, hey, should we do battle reports? I'm like, nope. There's people, there are people who are doing them much better than we want to spend the time to do. Right.
It's been covered.
That being said, Adam, I got to tell you, when I watch your videos, I'm always looking at the studio behind you, and I'm like, if I were going to film something, I got to clear an area. I got to actually set.
What I need to do is I have to get up during the middle of one of my videos and walk to the back and like touch stuff back there, because I've had so many people go, well, that's just a green screen back there, right? And I'm like, no, it's not.
It's just out of focus.
Yeah, exactly. It's shallow depth of field and all that kind of stuff. But the thing that's funny is that like the software I use is called Final Cut Pro. It's a Mac product.
Yeah.
And the most recent version of it has got this new piece of software in it, and it's called a magnetic mask. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to very simply rotoscope yourself out. So like I can move this little point from this little thing over on the side and drop it on me in the part that I'm editing, and it will draw an outline around me. And it's a really good, very, very, very good outline. You don't get the halo and the green screen, and there is no green screen. That's the thing. And it will knock me out from the background. So I can put stuff behind me, you know, it's in front of the background, but behind me and stuff like that. And I've been messing with this.
I saw you do this with text in your latest video.
I just did it. I did it in today's video.
It was pretty cool. I noticed
and it's so quick and so simple. It used to be a giant pain in the butt to like literally draw frame by frame kind of around it. Now it's simple because of like, you know, machine learning and jazz like that. And it's a really cool thing, but it makes people go, well, yeah, he's on a green screen. You can see because the stuff is behind him. And I'm like, no, it's becoming, I gotta cut back on it a little bit, because it's one of those when all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail kind of thing, you know? So I have to not try to do it constantly, but it is fun, and it is, it does add a little bit.
There's these guys on YouTube called the Corridor Crew, and they do, they do all this stuff. Watch their thing on real-time effects in NFL football games. It was a fascinating video. But before we get too deep into like the technical how-to and everything, let's take a break. We're gonna come back. Let's talk about some of the downsides of this growing, influence that we all have here. So we'll be right back. All right, and we're back. And now that we started getting a little off topic there, I knew we would, but we've talked about a lot of the good that I think we've experienced through this, and I hope other people have experienced through this. And I think the key topic the key point is camaraderie and being able to have something in common that you can all talk about. But there's also some challenges, I think, around this. I think especially whether it's online print content, YouTube, podcast, whatever, it used to be you didn't see for various games, especially in the competitive field, like net lists spreading as fast as they do these days. It is now the minute a tournament is over, it is here are the winners lists. From my experience at the few events I've gone to and played at, and I played a narrative event up Tacoma Open late last year. I played against lists that were in theory narrative, but you get there and you're like, yep, that's exactly that list. And that's that list. I played 2 separate Black Templar players basically with the exact same list. And I'm like, okay,
I remember back in 5th edition when there was that list for Grey Knights and you had the Razorback and the whole deal, that kind of stuff.
With the Siamo and all that.
Yep. I remember being at Adepticon with a bunch of friends, and we were just walking around, and it was we'd probably had a cocktail or two at this point, and we were just walking around looking at the tables and just being like, there's one, there's one, there's one. And it was just, and we were getting a little boisterous because we're just like, there's one, because they were everywhere. Yeah. And that was, 15 years ago, easily. So yeah, it's not anything new, I guess. I mean, the transference of data instantaneously across the planet can allow you to talk to your grandmother on the other side of the globe, but it also, makes it so that the leaf blower list gets around real quick.
Oh, the leaf blower list. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 5th ed at its height.
Yeah. I really, the 5th ed was when I played the most. I still didn't play tournaments, but that's when I played the most of 40K. And then it sort of waned. And then 7th edition, I was like, ugh. And then 8th, I was like, yay. And then 9th, I was like, eh. And then now 10th, I've done some combat patrol. Well, I've done some combat patrol. Me and Sam actually played a bunch of combat patrol. I've got 4 different painted combat patrols done. And I've got a 5th one that's like half done. And now there's a new combat patrol coming out, I think next issue of White Dwarf, that's going to be basically just 2 armatures. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting too. And I might do something with that. But for the most part, it's not like going to tournaments. I'm there sometimes at tournaments, but I'm never playing. Yeah. So I haven't gone up against that type of like net list kind of, repeatedly kind of thing that you see at shows. The
net list thing for me leads to the next kind of step of that, which is, and Dave, I saw this after I played it play on tabletop, right? I went and by the way, I knew I would. It was not shocked at all. Anytime this is the other reason I won't do a battle report. I don't need all the ways I play incorrectly pointed out to me. I know, trust me. But what it also leads to is, I think, a mentality of there's just one way to play the game. There's just, and so at the play on tabletop thing, like I brought this list that was absolutely not competitive. It was Thousand Suns with some mixed, a couple sorcerers, and then mixed in a bunch of Tzeentch demons, which weren't particularly great at the moment. But I thought, look, you're going to get to see this beautiful army, and thematically it looks really cool. And then Nick kicked my teeth in. But one of the first comments I saw in there was, how come you didn't take Magnus? He should have more sorcerers, and it's like, if I were playing in a tournament and I cared to win the tournament, maybe I would bring that, because that's what everybody else playing Thousand Suns is bringing. I want to experience this a little differently.
I think when you have that many brains all looking at the codex at the same time, no matter how many people are working at Games Workshop, for example, they can't necessarily see the path as easily as 20,000, kind of zealots can look at it and play it in their basement and test it out and take it to tournaments and also be like, this is the way you win, which is part of why Games Workshop has to change things so frequently, because otherwise there's an answer in many situations. I mean, admittedly, you will have people, I've heard of people who are just good players, just really good players, who can show up with like a weird, like a meme list,
something you weren't expecting.
Yeah, and still win. But in many situations, there is the first time I ever played.
I am not that guy, by the way.
Right, no, me neither. No, I can't see the Matrix at all. No. But I got a friend. But the first time I played Axis and Allies, I was playing with a bunch of guys who play frequently, and I forget who I was, England maybe. And so my first turn, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, and they all are just looking at me and they're all just shaking their heads. And I'm like, what? And they're like, that's not what you do in first turn. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be fun. I can tell already. And so, that is a thing that I think is, it's problematic to just tournament play, that's part of the issue. And I think that that's one of and because of that, so many people looking at it, you get this kind of net list that pops up, and it's not like they're wrong.
No, they're not.
Exactly. Like, this is the best way, right? It's the way it works.
For sure. Especially in that tournament environment, which is so for Games Workshop games is so prescribed. It's like, here's your terrain. Here's exactly how it's laid out. Like, and here's the rules you're going to play by, which honestly is the way to play a tournament. Like, we used to joke, like, winning is a theme. Like, that's the theme of a tournament. You're going there to win.
Yeah, it's heading into like what I see people online refer to as esports to some degree, and it is a thing. There's a great tournament series in the Midwest. It's in Northern Illinois, I believe, and it's called it's for Age of Sigmar, and it's called Holy Havoc. There's like the Holy Havoc and Holy Wars are the two that they do, and they're team tournaments, and each table has its own not only look but its own like, instead of getting a scenario and we're all going to play the same scenario, each table has its own scenario.
Oh, interesting.
So they're much more narrative, and the net list won't necessarily win there because it's not based off of, well, everything's the right size, and this is like, you have to have something that's got a lot more different, possible irons in the fire so that you can switch tactics, because this table has got you to do this and this table needs that. And I really think that's honestly a little bit of a better way to go. It certainly seems more fun.
That's certainly our play style.
Exactly. Yeah, not for everybody, but for the people who are like, I'm looking to like win, and it becomes more of a sport and less of a game to some degree.
That's an interesting point. Every sport you play, both teams have an equal chance to win in theory, right? Mm-hmm. American football. Well,
sure.
Everybody's got the same players. Who plays better, right? And that's the objective of, I think, a tournament. Which is, again, it's not my play style, but I get that people like it, and I can see why. I can see why Doug Johnson enjoys that style of play.
I just think it would be, if you really wanted to have it come down to the person and their skill, I think that chess might be the better way to go, because you're using the same stuff on each side.
Exactly. Yeah. And you'll never get the 18 armies or whatever it is that
to be perfectly balanced. It's a fallacy. Exactly.
I've never participated in a tournament.
Have you not?
Yeah, not one ever. And it goes against the game that I'm playing, because I don't necessarily play Warhammer.
Right.
I play. I'm hanging out with my friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And so we could be playing anything. And so when it comes to that's actually quite an intimidating scenario.
I agree.
Where I'm
absolutely.
I'm in a scenario where I'm playing against someone who I don't know. And because my natural instinct is to make fun of everything and to banter. Mm-hmm. And so that's not necessarily appropriate in a tournament setting.
Yeah. Well, it can be. I mean, it depends on your opponent, right?
There's a lot of people
but it's like, it's hit or miss, isn't it? Because
yes.
Yeah, it's like the person's here like, no, we got to figure out who the best general is.
I'm here to get to the top.
Here to get to the top. And I'm here just goofing around.
People do come to tournaments for different reasons. And I
think in the early phases, for the early rounds, you've got your person who is there to win up against someone who's there
going to be in the bottom bracket, right?
Exactly. But once you get to like second, third, all of a sudden now you've got people, in the lower part of the bracket who are like, I'm here to play 5 games. Yeah. Like, I don't care if we win or not. I just wanted to get 5 games in a day. That sounded like a hoot. And then you've got other people who are definitely like tracking ITC points and doing all that kind of jazz and whatever. And that's cool. And they do get split early on in these tournaments. But that first, I don't know if any tournaments do seeds where they take a look at like your IT score your
that's
ITC
an interesting
score
idea,
and like put you up against people who are also, and then other people who are
tennis,
like,
they see you against.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be a lot more work, but it would be an interesting thing to take a look at. But yeah, there are definitely people who go to tournaments who are just like, I'm not going to win a single game. If I do, that'll be a win. That'll be awesome.
That was me.
Yeah.
That was me at War on the Shore. I was like, I remember making a joke to Matt Weeks the year he asked, hey, would you guys want to come and stream the top tables? This was like, nobody was doing it really.
Yeah.
And we cobbled together this thing in order to do it. And I was like, but Matt, what if I wind up at the top tables? He's like, okay, so anyway, like, all right, well,
Yeah.
You never know. Yeah, Dave, that's interesting that you've never played in a tournament before. I do think that online there tends to be this focus. This is what I see as one of the drawbacks. There's such a focus on esports-ish type tournament play that and that brings people into 40K sometimes, which is great, except that they only see like this is how you play, and it's kind of ingrained that this is how the game is played. Like if you're not playing it this way, you're playing it wrong. I used to do this thing where I would like I'd look at my web logs for my website, and I could see when somebody linked to something, and I'd go, and it'd be like some small forum somewhere, and I'd join that forum and then like see what the person said, and then I'd reply, and they'd be like, "Oh my god, how's this person like found?"
Oh yeah, and
I remember this one guy was talking, because in the show I was like, I don't understand what a smash captain is, like what's and this guy put down the entire show and everything, saying he doesn't even know what a smash captain is. Well, I don't play in tournament play. Why would I care what a smash captain is? Oh, it's a jump pack captain with Thunderhammer. Great. So I didn't know.
Now we know.
You assigned some nickname to it. Were you even around when the leaf blower? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
It can just drum up so much, I think, negativity, and then like this meta chasing aspect where it's like, well, I see this one, so I now have to get this. A recent example I gave was I play primarily Chaos and Havocs. I was talking about this with Campbell the other day. Like, people are, what's our anti-tank? And I said, well, I've had some pretty good luck with Havocs, and Havocs are garbage. And I'm like, okay, I've popped a bunch of tanks with these guys with las cannons. Okay. In a tournament setting where your range is at max 24 inches, at max, and a lot of times it's even 20.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now I see why you think Havoc suck, in that setting. Yeah. I mean, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight,
Well, it is definitely a situation, again, of those people can see the matrix and go, this is not good ROI, right? Like, for the amount of points I spend on this, it doesn't kill this many things per turn. Like, you've seen the terms out there before, the MEQ, the Marine equivalent or the Terminator equivalent. Like, well, and if you do the math hammer, blah, blah, you're going to get 2.5 MEQ, and you're just like, oh, good Lord. I'm like, yeah, but like, what color is his armor? Is it cool? Does he got like a neat hat? I mean, like, for me, that's the stuff I'm more interested in. Yeah. And that's the difference between the people who play at super high levels and the people who don't. And there's nothing wrong with either of those.
But we can find content that supports the way we like to play as well. I mean, I'm not.
Exactly. But the problem is, and you're absolutely right, like what you said before, if you come into it seeing only the meta watch, seeing only that kind of stuff, then you go, well, this is the hobby. And it's not necessarily. It's a part of the hobby.
Right.
The meta watch stuff that comes up from GW, I had a conversation with Ash Barker from Guerrilla Miniature Games earlier last year. I was in Canada and for a thing and whatnot, and we got together and had a conversation. And it's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought of it. The reason that the meta watch has become kind of a big thing you should see over, let's say, Warhammer community on the website, is because they look at the hits that every article gets.
Yeah.
And those articles get a lot of hits because people want to know whether they're tournament players or not even necessarily big tournament players. They play at their local, whatever shop, and they want to know what's the thing that wins. And so those articles get tons and tons and tons of hits because everyone's like, well, so what's the thing? What's the trick now? Right. And then GW looks at it and goes, well, this is evidently quite important because there's been a lot of views. And then that just kind of sort of starts the cycle, even though if you were to actually figure out a way to like literally survey everybody who buys the stuff. Like, when I first got into 40K, I had heard this thing that was going around for years, that the majority of the sales of Warhammer were to the moms of like 14-year-old boys who would buy some stuff at the mall, at the Warhammer store in the mall, and then that stuff would go home with them. It would get half built, and then it would end up underneath the bed. And that was the majority. It wasn't the people who were playing like weekly. It wasn't people who were playing at tournaments. It was the people who would get into it and then like stall out, and then it would just ad nauseum. And I don't know if that's true necessarily or not, but at the time, at least, it sounded true. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, they look at the same statistics and they look at it and they go, well, we should talk more about this, when it is honestly affecting a very small situation, or a very small portion of the people. And I think that they're smart enough over at Warhammer to be able to also go, yeah, but we want to talk about things like narrative, and they've been doing the narrative events.
They
and
just
stuff
announced
like that.
today, are going to be pre-orders for a narrative campaign thing that.
Yeah, I've been invited to a couple of those, and I've never gone, although they had one that was happening, I think, at Nova. Was there one at Nova as well? Yeah. So I was kind of there for that, and I was talking to some folks, and they had people dressed up in cosplay, and they were doing stuff and everything like that, and that was cool.
So shout out to Chris Stover.
What's that?
Shout out to Chris Stover.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He does a great job. He was at Tacoma Open doing that stuff too.
I was talking with Rachel from Rachel Paints Minis and whatnot. And she was dressed up as a
Sister of Battle.
She was a Sister of Battle. Yeah, it was a great costume. Really good.
She was at both Nova and Tacoma. She was fantastic. Super fun.
Yeah.
Super fun. Mm-hmm. So I think, it can kind of define the way people approach a game, whether it's Warhammer, whether it's something else. Mm-hmm. I think there's a risk of that. And I used to see this too, which is like, you can also spread misinformation real fast around this. There used to be a podcast that was focused on tournament play. I don't want to name any names, and they were covering chaos in particular. And Dave will appreciate this. And they talked about the Defiler at one point. And they said they gave some misinformation about, like, at the time, like how its battle cannon could be used. And I don't remember the exact rule, but it was absolutely incorrect. And in fact, listening to them at that time, I was like, well, that's wrong. This is what the rule actually is. Mm-hmm. Then I wound up in a game where somebody regurgitated that information to me because they heard it from there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, they are incorrect. Let me show you the actual rule, which is right here. Yeah. And I was always super concerned for myself. Again, probably one of the reasons I avoid battle reports, about telling somebody something was incorrect and them then taking that and propagating that information out there.
Some of that really comes from, I think, the idea that people look at us as content creators as if we are
experts.
Experts, journalists on the subject. News, exactly. And honestly, I'm a guy in a room, and sometimes I go into the basement and I do some painting and I make stuff up and I talk about things. And I always try to make that very important, clear to folks that I'm not a journalist. This isn't news. This is stuff that I believe to be true, and I've got experience or whatever. But I'm not an expert. And part of it is to stay away from those types of things. Obviously, if you're mainly focused on competitive play and that's the point of your whatever production, then, you, especially for that situation, should have your ducks in a row, because that's, rules are super important in those situations.
Rules are super
right?
important in those situations.
Right.
And you're going to create some confusion. Dave, you guys used to do a lot of battle reports. And you had a very unique style for the way you did it. And you even did like a video on how you videoed your battle reports at one point. But I used to love how you would just be like, you're holding a handheld camera and you'd be like, here's the roll, and you just show like the important rolls and it'd cut to each of those. Those had to take forever to edit. I can only imagine. But no, I was going to say, did you get a lot of feedback about, hey, you guys did this rule wrong, or you're, giving out information that's incorrect ever? Like, what was the feedback you would get off those things?
So I love and hate that you're talking about this. Okay. So some context. Yes, absolutely. When you're a content creator, defaulted to, you're the authority on the subject for some reason. You're just seen. You have a platform. Yeah. People are going to see it, which is, there's an inherent responsibility to try to get things as accurate as possible, so that we're not spreading misinformation. There's the human element as well of like, well, even in spite of our best efforts to get things correct, there are going to be errors. And then mix into that personality type. Mm-hmm. And so for myself, where, I don't know, neurospicy, neurodivergent, ADHD, call it what you will.
Chaos.
Chaos. When it comes to the accuracy of getting things right, you're talking about a dude who, like, that's not a flamer, that's a melta, even though it's clearly modeled as a flamer.
Sure.
because I'm too lazy to convert it so that it's what you see is what you get.
Right.
And so when it comes to rules, the illusion of rules, when it comes to like the agreed upon ways in which to play a game and the understanding of that and the explanation, articulation, and accuracy of that, I am the worst person on the planet to make content in that sphere.
Right.
And so I at first tried to really mask every single error that I'd make, which would require me combing through a video that I would film,
comparing it to the rule set,
also require me to fully understand the rule.
Yeah.
Which is like, even going through that filtering process, I didn't catch everything. Inevitably, there would be people who would leave comments like, "Oh, you got that wrong. It's this.
You should have re-rolled."
Other people on the team, on the mini wargaming team, much better at the rules. Just they have brains for it. And so what I did after a while is I would actually put a disclaimer at the beginning of the video. It's like, if you're watching this for the purposes of rules accuracy, you're wrong video, right? Like, just there will be errors, and so don't try to learn the game by watching
from this video.
Right?
And sometimes the commenters are wrong.
And
like
sometimes
they said,
they're
no,
wrong
you
too.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you did that wrong. And you go back and you're like, I did? I can't believe it. And you read it and you're like, no, it is you who are wrong, sir. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And there was a consideration with, because, people brought up a good point. They're like, well, hey, you got a paid subscription where you're making more battle reports, and, you got to get your rules right because people are paying for that content. So,
no, I don't.
And so what we did, and it's funny because it's like, it feels like if people are saying it should be correct. And so what we did for a while is we actually had this series called Rules You Got Wrong, which would follow up the battle report that we did. When the other guys would make the video, it was mostly them correcting the viewers. When I would make the video, it'd be like, oh, right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Oh, dang, I got that wrong. Oh, shoot. Yeah. All right. Yeah, you're right. So it's like complete opposite in my case.
I honestly think that there's some value in that, because it takes a deeper dive into the rules by going, I thought it was this, but it was actually this. Yes. And then hopefully that'll stick with a person maybe down the road,
Hopefully you learn by dying, right? It's like, I lost all those dudes.
I've learned more from some painting videos. Guys, in some of these painting videos, they make it look so easy, and they know how to hold the brush. They know the technique. They know how much paint to be on the brush. And you look and you go, wow, that looks really easy. And then you're and it takes practice. But I have learned more from when guys make mistakes in the videos and show, look, I made this mistake. Here's how I'm going to fix it. And it was like, oh, yeah, that was pretty clever. I distinctly remember this guy screwed up painting the power weapon on some Eldar, and it was like an Eldar spear, and he's like, so I should have painted this next, and I've screwed up, so here's what I'm going to do. And he takes this rubber glove and he pokes the spear through the rubber glove, and he goes, now I can put the rest of the model in the rubber glove and paint the spear without it. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot tell you how many times I have used that technique.
Cool.
And it's just like, so Dave, to your point, I mean, I love that you guys would kind of do like a mea culpa episode afterwards.
Yeah. And it made more content too, right? It's like people would learn with us. And it felt tedious though. It felt like, oh yeah, we got to do this.
Yeah.
But it was all good. And ultimately it's very interesting because there's no rule that you have to get the stuff accurate. Like, there's a consideration, and you should try to.
Of course.
But if you don't, heck, there could be entire series that are centered around people playing games incorrectly.
I was going to say we should do a game. If I ever come up there, Dave, we're going to play a game, and we're going to intentionally play some things wrong. Just to see it.
My dad always used to say that his stories were 90% true and 10% better. Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said for that in battle reports.
Yeah.
Because if you just completely adhere to the rules, the letter of the law, are you going to have as much fun in some situations, or is it better sometimes to just be like, find out later, oh geez, gosh, that guy should have died a long time ago. Sorry. But he just happened to live. I don't know how. It's God in the machine kind of situation that just it just happened that and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I think that especially people who get very specifically like targeted on the rules when they see a rule that's wrong from like a big group, like you guys in mini wargaming, they're going to jump on that and that's their badge of honor. Well, I told them that they did this thing wrong, and you're like, okay, cool. But we had a fun time playing. It was a good time. So that's really, for me at least, the
Seth Meyers always puts out like a corrections thing. I don't know if you watch him, but for his show, he basically gathers all the things where people told him he said something incorrect, and on like the weekend he releases like this video there. He sits there and he goes through, oh, you guys said this. Well, I don't care, like he'll like go through these things. But Dave, I to your point, like people calling out these things. I will say, and you made a point that was when you did it, it was, oh yeah, you're right, I'm wrong. But when other guys in the studio were doing it, they'd be like, no, you're actually wrong. Yeah. One thing I appreciated at Play on Tabletop when I was playing those guys, I mean, clearly they are well more versed at that time than I was in the rules, was they were there to help you through the rules too. Like they want you to have a good experience, and they want to make sure, hey, we're trying to adhere to this rule. Don't forget you have this, and then they would edit that piece out just so that it all flowed really well together. I really appreciated their help.
It would make a worse video probably if like one person was just like, well, I think this is the way it works all the time. Yeah, it would be a problem. So you want to make a good product on their end. That's specifically what they're focusing on. Yeah. So yeah.
Anecdotally, okay, so when I go to Play On, they know in advance that they need to add extra resource to help someone who needs to help Dave. It's like, okay, you're on Dave duty. You have the rule. You have the code, his codex, his army. Because he doesn't know his army. Like, you know it better than him, even though you don't play his army. And you just call out rules because otherwise production would take 3 times as long.
Dave gets a handler. On schedule.
So there's a handler, right? In addition to the rules. And typically it's Mubin. So, props to him. He does play sharp. Chaos. And so, in fact, I play so infrequently that whenever I go, they make my list, right? They're like, oh, I know Dave. Dave would like this because he likes Khorne Berserkers, and this is actually current now, so we should probably put it in these vehicles, and so they do that because for me to sit down and focus, it would take me 4 times as long. Yeah, they're like, it's just more efficient for us to make it. So, Dave, what do you think of the list? Okay, cool.
Sounds good. Is Karn in it? I'm in.
Karn, I'm good. That's all I need. That's all I need to know. So there's only one way to play this game, and it's to Khorne forward.
To the point of the correcting of incorrect material and the potential spreading of incorrect information. I think also we have seen certain channels will also spread a certain amount of negativity within the environment, and whether that's a toxic environment or gatekeeping people out, or whatever your flavor is. I wholeheartedly supported the Games Workshop 40Ks for everybody statement. Like I was 100% in that. It is meant to be inclusive. I didn't see that as any kind of like virtue signaling. Like I think they truly believe that. And knowing, as probably all of us do, people there, we know how they feel about it. And that I think reflected the people we know and what their values are. Dave, recently you did a thing on toxic positivity, and I mentioned earlier at the show, like, oh, that hit me because we have always set out to kind of look at the silver lining on everything. That's not to say I won't call out things that I don't like, but from the get-go, back in the old 40K radio days, they'd be like, we're going to rant about this. And I'm like, we do not do rants on this show. Like, it's just, I want to talk about what I like.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a tactic to some degree that you see, and you see it more and more these days to some degree in channels and all kinds of different, the web, Blue Sky, Twitter, whatever. And I see it basically as people talk about clickbait. People talk about like all those different types of things, like explosive types of titles and things like that. And a lot of that comes from just people understanding
the algorithm,
the human brain.
And
it's not the algorithm.
Fair enough. It's not.
Yeah, because the algorithm itself is reacting to the people.
Fair
and
enough.
I think,
yeah.
And I think a lot of people
one step down.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of people kind of think that the algorithm is this like AI that looks at everybody's video and go, you didn't talk about Warhammer, so we're going to give you less points. Right. It's actually that you didn't talk about Warhammer. Warhammer's very popular. Fewer people who watched your last video, which did talk about Warhammer. Fewer people watched this one. So therefore, the algorithm noticed that and then gives you less points and then doesn't show it to as many people. So just to make that completely clear. But the lizard brain that we all have wants to know about drama, wants to know about like, oh, what did they do now? You know, that type of stuff. And there are channels that focus on that. And that's their business. That's their business plan, literally. Like it's, you know, they're doing it because it does have a tendency to work.
Here's the difference.
I try not to do that myself personally, but there are still times when I talk about GW and I'm like, they messed up.
Look, you know what I mean? If you don't like, yeah. But here's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
The three of us do this because we enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
If I were focusing on what is wrong or what the drama is, I would argue I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. What I'm trying to do, the enjoyment I'm getting is from the attention that I am drawing from whatever statement I am making.
Right.
Yeah. So I have I love that we're talking about this. I have opinions.
Good. Let's hear
on this. So on the subject of the algorithm and how it is a predictive reflection of what we're most likely to engage in. If a person is engaging in negative or toxic type of content, that is the content for them. And we know that there's all types of content. We know there's positive content, negative content, and we know that the internet is fueled by rage, fueled by the lizard brain of catastrophe and 10-car pileup, I must watch. And so it is a lazier, almost easier, like, okay, I got to make it the most extreme as possible. And it's almost an arms race for attention.
It's the dark side of the force.
Even though my content isn't negative by nature, if I made it slightly negative, then it could compete with that attention economy, whereas I otherwise wouldn't be seen because it's not loud enough in this cacophony of anger that exists out there, right? So I think there is a good balance between, people are going to make whatever content they're going to make, whatever they want,
for
for whatever reason.
Sure.
We're not going to stop it. We can't stop it. We certainly reserve the right to dislike that content. Most likely our algorithm, which is super tailored to us individually, it's not going to come up in our feed. And so it won't even affect us, really. Unless something is so viral that it just goes everywhere.
Right.
But those are outliers, and that's clear cut.
It's a really good point.
Bias, right? And so it only becomes a problem if we believe it's a problem and engage in that content, and then kind of get trapped in the loops, in the rabbit holes, and the doom scrolls of the negativity. But if we're looking for more kind of like wholesome, uplifting, positive, fun, engaging type of hobby gaming content, and we are genuinely wired that way, predictive algorithms will show us that more often.
For sure. You'll see, and we've all seen this using just YouTube in general. You watch a video that you saw that come across your thing about e-bikes, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And now all you see is e-bike stuff, or whatever, that kind of deal. And that's fine. I think that I don't know. I think that the concept, like I've noticed in my content, I was doing videos not because I was trying to pull in that kind of rage bait type of stuff or whatever, but I would do videos about, like when the new edition of Kill Team came out and it was not to my liking. Yeah. I mentioned that. I was like, look, this is not what I'm wanted. And here's why. Maybe it's what you want. But I was phrasing the video from the idea of, I don't like this, and that got some negative pushback, obviously, from people who do like it or whatever. And there's all kinds of stuff like that, and it made me change my content, honestly. And the reason, because I literally am like, until GW does something that I like, I'm just not really going to talk about their product much.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Rather than talk about this sucks and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it was dangerous, if it was a glue that killed you, I would talk about that because you should know about that. That seems kind of like
somebody were to ask suddenly, hey,
they should
Adam,
take it off the market.
You used to play a lot of Kill Team. What's going on? And you're like, well, I just don't like the new version. You know?
Yeah, and if it's in a live stream and someone asks, I'll explain why or whatever, but I don't need to make video after video after video about, well, they did this and they did this. There's a lot of games that a lot of companies make that I don't interest me, and then I don't talk about it. And from time to time I get somebody who's like, why don't you talk about this game? And I'm like, it's not for me. And I'm not just here to talk about every game out there. There are news channels that do that, and that's a totally different thing, but that's not what I'm doing. And so yeah, I've done videos in the past like that with that kind of that a bit of a negative vibe. And from my aspect, it was always like, I want this to be better. Yeah, that's why I'm doing this. Right. And I'm not saying that it's never going to be better. I'm just saying that I don't know that me telling Games Workshop, it'd be really cool if you guys would fix, the way Warhammer, or, whatever it is, because I like it better that way. I'm not everybody either. And they're going to follow sales. So if doing Kill Team the way they do it now in the 3rd edition, or whatever you want to call it, the 2024 edition or whatever, if that's making them more money, then they're going to continue to do that. But they won't be making my money because I'm not going to be interested. Right. Except sometimes every once in a while I buy a box of their stuff because I'm going to kit bash it, use it for something else. So there's that too as well. But the grand scheme of things is I've decided lately to just not talk about the things as much that I'm not interested in. That's why I started doing my stance. That's why I started the series that I do on the channel from time to time called Why I Like It. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of much what it is on the tin. You know what I mean? Here's a game that I like, or here's a thing that I like, or a recent one I did was talking about the 3D printer that I bought, the Bamboo Labs one that I like a lot, and it's very cool. And I was surprised at how much I liked it. And so I made a video about it. So I think that for me, at least, and everybody's got their own kind of vibe on what they're going to do on their channel. But for me, that's been what I've been trying to focus on more.
I think that's
cool. Yeah. I love that. That's, for me, and Carl, you mentioned that too. That's always been my ethos in terms of the content that I make, with the exception of the recent one, where the toxic positivity one. Yeah. Which coincidentally, this is actually not an accident. It's my lowest engaged video in terms of like reception, lowest viewed. It makes perfect sense though, because the viewer profile that's been cultivated on the channel is more positive, is more inclusive, is more fun. It's the most downvoted one, and it's the lowest engaged one. That's interesting. Because the people that tune into the channel, and I'm talking specifically about Mini Wargamer Dave YouTube channel as opposed to the main Mini Wargaming channel. Yeah, that's all battle reports and gaming, which includes all of us. Whereas recently I started making story-driven, people-driven content video in its own place, and it made the most sense to start a new channel for that. The people that tune in they want to hear, let's talk about this guy's obsession and why he paints the murals like the Sistine Chapel on the shoulder pads of this knight. Like, that's cool. Mm-hmm. I want to celebrate the cool thing, and I want to discover that and be curious about that. Fun. It's celebrating the fun of the hobby. And anytime I am tempted to think outside of what I like about it, and anytime I'm tempted to think of things I dislike, it actually backfires, because it goes against really why I make content. It doesn't appease any sort of viewer profile that I've built.
As I say, that's not what your audience is there for.
It's not my audience is there for. That's not even why I'm doing it. Like,
right.
It's like the only temptation is the potential clicks on it, and it's shallow. It's inherently shallow. More shallow, I should say. In the moment when I'm making it, it's emotion fueled, and so it feels like it's genuine. But when I examine it, because I pick apart every video that I make, all the intention behind it and the process, and I try to improve every single time. And that one, I look back and like, it makes sense. It makes sense why it didn't do very well.
Interestingly enough, I've talked about this before too, but we did an episode of So You Want to Be a Black Library Writer. And like, we talked to several writers. I talked to Nick Heim, who was at the time doing all the editing for all the Black Library stuff. Lowest rated ever. Turns out not a lot of people want to be Black Library.
Yeah, writers. It's I have found in doing content that the ones that I think are going to be bangers are almost never bangers. And the ones that I'm like, this ain't going to do well.
Yeah.
I just, I've been doing it long enough that I now almost trust as soon as I go, I'm not sure about this one, that one will do real well. Like,
I have no idea how this episode will do. Like,
yeah, exactly. But like 2 weeks ago, I did this video about that anchorite shrine, and they do the rust technique, and I was just so happy with it. Not only how the model looked, but the photography that I did. I thought the video was good. Everything worked out like 9 out of 10. Now, in YouTube, 9 out of 10 is bad. In the rest of the world, like, 10 out of 10, that's awesome. Well, in YouTube, it's comparing this current video to the previous 9 videos. Right. And then it gives you a place, and it says, currently, this video's been up for 4 hours. And when the last 9 videos were up for 4 hours, they had more views than this one, and this one is in 9th place. So 1 out of 10 is awesome in this particular world, and not 10 out of 10 is bad. And so that video was like 9 out of 10. I'm like, come on, man. And then the video that I did that we went live today was about, like talking about it's kind of like why things are kind of why people bounce off of the hobby.
Yeah,
why people
like come in. I watched it. Yeah.
And it was a thing that I literally it was an idea that I had notes, and I didn't have to go out and do a lot of footage, and and it was just like, I'll put this together. These are my thoughts, and 2 out of 10. Like, and like it's got, I don't know, it's been up for, 18 hours or something like that. And it's got, 35,000 views or something like that. And so it's just weird when that type of stuff happens, but it really does depend. Like talking about, so you want to be a writer. Well, a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to be a writer. Right. And they're not even necessarily curious about what it would take. It's the same thing with tutorials I've found. Yeah. When you make a video about how to paint a power sword. Years and years ago, Sam did a video on my channel about how to paint a power sword. It launched terribly. Yeah. It's had lousy velocity because a person sees that come through their feed and they look at it and they're like, well, I'm not really painting power swords right now, so I don't care.
But when I want to, maybe I find.
But when I want to, a year and a half later, I'm going to type in how to paint Spark. And so those videos that are tutorials have a tendency to have more of a long tail. Interesting. But they've got terrible velocity. And if you just go into it knowing that it will happen as it, over time, like look at Vince Venturella, the majority of his videos are tutorials. And he's like, yeah, I know they're not going to get many views the first weekend, but people find them for years and years and years to come. And I see comments all the time. Exactly. And that just depends on how you want to handle your channel.
What about, let's move forward a little bit. What about burnout? There have been a couple times where I've taken breaks. I took a break for a year at one point and then came back for several years and then took another break for a year. And now we've been back 2 years. Mm-hmm. I'm still feeling energized. Like I'm not at that point, but you guys put out content constantly. How has burnout been for you guys?
I love how that's the perception for, because in my case, I'm like, man, I wish I put out 10 times the amount that I actually put out.
Yeah, so do I. It's just I don't have that time.
And I suppose it's all relative, right? But when it comes to burnout, I'm in this cycle of constantly fooling myself into thinking that I can do more than I can. And the reason why the cycle keeps on perpetuating is because there's a pattern about it. I get an idea for a video, I get excited for it, I film it, I gather whatever B-roll, edit it together, post it, get the rush of the initial velocity of it or the disappointment of the velocity of it. That there's that hump, and then there's this valley of despair that follows that, which is I don't know what I'm going to do now. I don't know what content I'm going to make. Especially if the previous video was successful. It's like I don't know if I can ever top that. There seems to be this, even though I understand and know through evidence and experience that I am in the middle of this cycle, which is predictive, I still feel all the feelings that go through that cycle. And then once I'm out of like the valley of despair, it's like, oh, good. Okay. Yeah. I'm out of the valley. Okay. I'm good. I'm in a flow state. I can, time's an illusion. I'm not going to go to sleep tonight. I'm just going to like film everything that I can and then, edit until 3 a.m. And then, which is horrible, like horrible sleep schedule.
And then it all starts over again.
And then it starts over again. And the worst actually is mass disruptions to that, which constitute going to events or going on a family vacation, which are awesome in and of themselves for different reasons. But in the terms of the day-to-day default production flow and productivity of
It interrupts
work
it.
life,
Yeah.
it's a mass disruption. So it takes like 3 to 4 weeks to actually get back on track. Sometimes it's a 180 complete mental gear shift. It's I come back from a convention and I know there's a week of decompression, even though most of the time I again fool myself into thinking that I can be productive and get stuff done when I get home, because there's 100 ideas that I want to execute immediately, and then one or none of them end up happening. And so hobby burnout is certainly, or content creation burnout is, I think it comes with the territory. It's going to happen. There are things that can be done to mitigate the effects of it. There's certain things I do in my schedule to on a consistent basis. That's certainly helped that. Like I exercise at the same time every day, which is helpful. I'm eating well, I'm drinking enough water. I'm doing those things. I'm having other interactions. I'm actually unplugging when I'm home at night with family. There's a good 3 to 4 hour window where I'm unplugged, where I know that's kind of sacred time, which is beneficial to home family life. And it's also healthy for me.
Sure.
It's healthy for me because then it kind of resets and cleans any sort of fragmented thoughts or ideas that I thought were good, and kind of turns it into more practical applications the day after. And so that helps. But it certainly doesn't get rid of the burnout. And that's just in my case. I can only speak from my own experience. It's a constant challenge.
Interesting.
But the reward is worth that challenge.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
I think that, because it is a situation in which I've turned it into a job. One of, like I was saying earlier, I think
you can't afford to burn out, Adam.
Yeah, well, a little bit. It's one of my 3 jobs, and they're all interrelated and everything like that. So, in the old, previously when I've had other jobs in the past, I've burned out of those jobs as well. But you still got to, feed your cats, and you still got to pay your rent or whatever your deal is.
Yeah.
And so there's that too. But I've found over the years that just keeping a schedule is important. Kind of that whole concept of but I've got to put out a video every single Friday. And every once in a very great while, it's not the video I meant to put out. I put out a video, this was I think in 22 maybe, or 21. I was editing. It was Thursday night. I was editing. My mom called me and she's like, I need to go to the emergency room. So I took her to the emergency room, and she was fine eventually. But I made a video on my phone standing in the parking lot with the emergency room sign behind me saying, the video will land on Saturday, but I want to put this video up to let you folks know where it's going to cut, because, and it's not even so much, it's not even so much like, oh, well, I got to keep that streak running. There's a little bit of that, I'm not going to lie, but it's also just because when you've been doing it long enough and it's been coming out the same time on the same day for so long, people will get up and, in England and watch you with their tea, and they're like, well, where's the video? You know what I mean? So you got to put something. Exactly. So for me, the burnout is mitigated a little bit by just it's a job. Also, I've got the streak going and I want to keep it going, obviously. And then there's the other thing, which is just that sometimes when I do get a little burned out, I'm like, let's just change track. Let's just change some ideas up. Let's do some other videos. Yeah. And because I don't focus super niche, there are channels out there that just talk about painting, or they just talk about Golden Demon type painting. Right. And then there's channels out there that just talk about battle reports. They just, and so I'm kind of a little bit more, sometimes I'm talking about a painting tutorial. So I'm talking about a game I like. I'm talking about how to stay motivated. I can kind of hop around, and that helps a bunch, I think, for burnout as well, at least in my case. Fantastic.
Yeah. I've just I thought about switching it up to doing seasons and that kind of thing, but I just kind of like what I'm doing. And, if I start feeling a little bit of burnout, I can now rely on some of my partners to carry the load a little bit, and, we'll go from there. But, Yeah. I mean, we have a well of ideas of things to talk about. And as long as I'm having fun, that's the key for me. As long as it's fun, I'll keep doing it. The minute it becomes an obligation, as opposed to fun, then I'm out, so it's been very good. Okay. I have a couple quick things. We had a couple questions come in, as I posted, hey, I'm gonna have these great guests on the show. And we kind of touched on Alec Aaron's question was, are you going to touch on the subject of adversarial journalism, aka being negative about GW for clicks? I think we kind of touched on that already. He says it's at least 50% of the online hobby content these days. I'd say train your algorithm to look at the more positive things and stop clicking on those things.
Yeah, no, that is actually a little bit of a cell phone there. A little bit like if everything you see is that, it's because you keep watching it.
Yeah. There's a reason lingerie ads were showing up in my Facebook feed. Okay. Dave Taylor actually had a question. He said, one thing I'd be interested in hearing are Dave and Adam's thoughts on content creators' impact on Games Workshop or other game companies' approach to release schedules. I watch quite a few battle report channels to help learn games and rules update. We talk about that. But I find many of the creators, because they play 2 to 3 games a week or talk about it constantly in their office and studio, are constantly demanding updates and corrections and balances and digital tools to make that happen from Games Workshop. As an old grognard, I can remember when it was 5 to 6 years between updates, as we do. Now the pace of balanced data slate release means I personally can't keep up and feel quite apathetic about actually gaming outside of my gaming group, which is really interesting because Dave and I played a game at Nova Open this year, and like the game you were talking about earlier, Adam, I destroyed Dave, and it wasn't through some tactical genius on my part. It was just every roll was hot. Hey, I'm going to charge this Vindicator. Yeah, I'll fire Overwatch. Oh, look, 6 out of 8 are 6s. It was just like one thing after another. Dave literally looked at me at one point. He goes, "This is the worst game of 40K I've ever played." I'm like, "I'm so sorry." Yeah,
that's just sometimes it do be like that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
So, I mean, his question here is the community having an impact on? And I think the answer is yes. But is the community having an impact on how Games Workshop is releasing things so quickly? And kind of the demand and appetite for that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the money is what is driving the fact that I think they've back in the day, like we were talking about, it would be years in between codices. If you were like a Grey Knight player, you're like, man, if they're going to only make 3 codices this entire year, I hope it's one of mine. And that was the thing. That was just the way it went. And now you're like, man, I hope they don't make my codex twice this year. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to have to buy both of them.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I remember if you got a codex. Like if you got your codex and it was bad, you were like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, I'm screwed for years, years and years and years. Yeah, absolutely. So in that situation, I think that, I don't know. I think it's the money that is what makes them, I think that they focus so much on the new. And we've been seeing that in their production lately, where like, sure, this new thing's out and the next week this other new thing is out. But my local shop hasn't been able to get, like Predators, Chaos Predators or regular Predators for like 6 months.
Right.
And you're like, this is a staple of people's army, but yet you can't find it. But boy, they sure did come out with 6 new things, in the last 6 weeks. And I think that that's just, it's a money thing. And it's hopefully something that if they get the second factory built, that it'll hopefully be able to something that they can mitigate and help. But we'll see. Whether I think that the content creator community is affecting them in any fashion, I honestly don't think so. Like they do reach out and talk to us. They do, we have conversations at conventions and things like that. We have different little events. Like, I was in a thing like when they talked to us about Age of Sigmar. Like they showed us Age of Sigmar before they announced Age of Sigmar. We were at this event. Right. It was a little thing, and it wasn't like it wasn't like they flew us over like they did when they did the contrast paint, and also the Horus Heresy. They like flew a bunch of people over. This was just like another convention. They're like, hey, by the way, come on over here. We'll show you some stuff and then we'll do some video and make some content and all that kind of stuff. So that's about the extent of it. And I honestly feel like it's a little bit more of they're getting a little bit more from us sometimes than we're getting from them,
Without
to
a
some
doubt.
degree.
It's free marketing.
Yeah, exactly. And sure, yeah, they send free product from time to time, and there's that kind of stuff.
But even aside from that, I mean, I remember somebody at Adepticon years ago, we were talking about this, and they're like, why won't GW, this was before GW would talk to you, right?
Yeah.
Why won't GW talk to us? And I'm like, why would they? Like, we just spent hours talking about their products to everybody for free. They don't need to pay a thing.
Exactly. And so I think that I don't know that we have a lot of effect. I think they look at, I think they do look actually quite closely at the tournament scene.
Yeah.
Because it is play testing that they didn't have the chance to do initially. Yeah. And then and that's partially also why you see these 3 and 6 month kind of like constant updates to the points costs and the rules changes and things like that, partially because them trying to balance and everything like that. But it's also that churn just has a tendency to kind of drive more sales. And that's a thing as well. But
balance is good for sales too, though, right? Like,
what's that?
Balance would be good for sales as well, I think.
You would think so. And maybe it would. I don't know. I
we'll never know.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that in general, I don't know if we have much effect on them. I think smaller companies are more affected somewhat by things that we do. Okay. Like the guy who his name's Casey Garsky, and he makes this game that I like very much called Space Weirdos. And I've talked about it on my channel a bunch of times, and he's like, next time that we're at a convention together, I definitely owe you a drink. And I'm like, that's fine. I got no problem with that. So I think that the smaller companies definitely can feel some of the impact to some degree, if you will. But I don't know that I don't know that we necessarily change the tide much at all. We do get things out there to more people, and they talk about, that kind of stuff. And that's why they do send out product to some people and all that kind of jazz. But I don't think that they're going to change the way they do things based off of feedback from us. I could be wrong. Dave,
you have Mini Wargaming has pretty big reach. Like, was there ever when Matt made that video about, look, this is the way things are going for retailers. Like, was there any kind of feedback or anything from that? Or did you feel it had any impact beyond your customers directly?
Feedback from
Games Workshop or anything, like, was there any
at that time, there wasn't any we didn't, other than
they didn't really talk to people
trade rep.
Point.
Yeah. There wasn't a kind of the type of relationship that has been evolved into now. But this whole concept is interesting to me because I think that we do actually. So I'm going to take the opposing view here, in terms of we do have an effect, we as creators. And I think we have more of an effect than we realize. And then here's why. And I'll use this anecdote to compare because it's a much smaller version of GW. So when we ran the Ravaged Star campaign, the first one, I didn't expect it to reach what it did, like, at all, and I worked with over 60 creators, sent them product, and they made videos, a combination of Instagrammers and YouTubers and varying sizes of audiences with tracking links. And so I was able to see how much each individual creator contributed to the bottom line of that campaign. I had no clue beforehand because I had never been privy to that side of the process of promotion and marketing. It's always just been, oh, hey, let's send you some product and you can make a video about it. And in some cases, here's a sponsor. And in GW's case, here's some minis, right? And so having seen it from that perspective, and then thinking about what GW has in terms of its independent marketing arm, and let's call it us creators, and how many there are in the varying degrees of promoters that we are. In some cases, many creators are sent product. In other cases, other creators aren't, but they're going to promote it anyway. And if many of those voices are saying something, people will listen. And case in point, if a wrong rule is being misinformed, many people are going to hear it. And so because of GW's size now, how big of a company they are and the amount of games that they have, and the mechanism that is producing the game systems and the updates and the new units and the new products, from an individual's perspective, it could, and in many cases does, feel very overwhelming to, oh wow, every week there's a new product. Oh wow, there's a new edition of this game coming up, and here's a new army, and oh wow, half my army is now legends, and I haven't played in 6 months, and oh wow, it's a completely different game now. And so in order for them as a company, first and foremost, to make money, they are now at the stage where they have to do these things in order to continue making money and be competitive and kind of lead the way, versus a smaller independent company who's making one game, who can spend more time on releases and units that come out and that are fewer and farther between. And also adding to this, the perception of reality that is reflected in our own unique algorithms. And so we can tune into YouTube, and then we can see a video, and then we can see a related video on the same topic. And then it can feel to us that everyone is talking about this thing. Everyone is talking about the new update to this unit, into this army. And oh man, yeah, I'm seeing it everywhere. Wow, I'm fatigued. I'm mentally fatigued of that subject. Wow. And then you talk to your buddy about it, and like, yeah, they're talking about this. What are you talking about? I didn't see that.
Right.
Because it's a different reality.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that's happening too, but it's happening in all of the subcategories that exist, which are so plentiful because GW has so many fan bases, so many products and games that they produce. And especially us as older gamers, where we've been around and we've played so many of the games and we're fans of so many of those games, and we are interested in multiple games. And so we're going to feel that fatigue. We're going to feel that overwhelm much easier than, say, we're only interested in one game and in one army, and our algorithm kind of only shows that one thing. So it doesn't feel like there's as many options as there are.
That's a good point. Point. Well, all right. I got 3 rapid fire things I'm just going to throw out there before my dog eats my cat. And feel free to add or not, but this is really, like, as I was putting this together, kind of from a consumer's perspective, there's things I think you need to be aware of. And we talked about, that individual where I said, well, you're seeing 50% of this because you're feeding that algorithm, right? So look, be mindful of how content is influencing your perception of the game, and understand that, what I'm saying, it may not be your reality, as you were just saying, Dave. Like when I go to movie reviews, I tend to find the reviewers that kind of like the thing I like, and then I listen to what they say about other stuff. Engage with multiple sources so you get kind of a balanced view. You'll know what you like and what you don't like, but just be aware, and focus on these algorithms and things are going to feed you what you're clicking on. So just be aware of that, and you'll have to almost make a physical break from some things that you don't want to see or that you want to see. So know in your head how to work that in your favor, and then prioritize your personal enjoyment over chasing whatever trend is out there. If you're liking this one thing, great, keep liking it. I think that's awesome. What was the game you brought up, Adam? And I said Dave introduced me to it, and then it became unavailable. It was I cannot remember the name of it. Not Dark Age. Dark Age?
Shoot.
I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But, I had never seen that before. I watched Dave play it, and I kind of asked questions as he was playing it. I was like, okay, I'm going to get into this. And I was very excited about it. And then it was like so difficult to get the models at that point that it was done.
But I wasn't like trying to chase like, oh, this will be the next big thing. I was like, this looks like fun. I'm gonna explore this on my own. So from a consumer's perspective, I think you just need to be aware, follow those people that you kind of are speaking the language you're speaking, and know when if it doesn't match or they change and it's not what you want to see. There's plenty of opportunities out there to find somebody who is speaking to you.
I would tell you to type more things into YouTube.
Yeah.
I think rather than just like go to the YouTube, whatever you're doing on your TV, your phone, or your computer, or whatever, just going and looking at like, here's the For You page or whatever, definitely type things in. Case in point, when I stayed at the Mini Wargaming bunker during the opening back in June of 19. They've got, like a TV in the room, and that's got YouTube app on it. And so it wasn't my YouTube app because I wasn't logged in. So it was just in the room, and I'm in there one night and I just typed in like Wargaming or something like that. And I started seeing channels I'd never seen before because it wasn't me logged in. It was just standard, non-logged in guest person or whatever. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there that you probably don't know about. But if you just let YouTube show you stuff that they're like, this is what you want to see, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But on the other hand, if you just keep typing information into YouTube and then subscribe to channels and then actually look at your subscribe tab, that's another thing YouTube loves to do, is not show you stuff that you're actually subscribed to unless you actually go and look at the subscribe tab. Then, you're going to find things that you're a little bit more interested in, and you take a little bit more stewardship of your own personal, and algorithm, frankly, because that's where it works.
Yeah. I recommend having multiple accounts, and for tuning into different reasons. Like for instance, when I feel like listening to podcasts and learning about things, there's a certain account that I log into because I know that I'm more likely to find something mentally stimulating in the whole area of my brain when I'm logged into that, and I'm not distracted by other things in other accounts where I know I'd be distracted because I wouldn't actually find what I'm looking for.
Is that your sunglasses account?
Put on the shades.
For those who don't know, didn't you at some point like your guys' Mini Wargaming account got hacked and it like became like glasses or Facebook,
yeah,
and it was glasses.
Reading glasses.
Reading glasses. That was it.
That's right. Yeah,
yeah.
I kept waiting for that to change. I was like, oh, those guys.
The whole process of trying to reacquire the account, which we have, but for some stupid reason, changing the name of the page
can only be done once every 8 year or year like or whatever it is. Yeah.
Why can't you change the name of a page? Like you can rebrand a YouTube channel very easily. Like what? Yeah. So it's essentially a dead page because whenever we post, people think it's not us.
Right.
It says reading glasses.
You still haven't been able to change it.
I know.
Oh.
Still haven't been able to.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just thought that was fun. So multiple accounts.
Yeah, multiple accounts. And so it's like, I like miniatures. I like seeing cool paint jobs. And so this is the account that I log into when I do that. This is the shared family account. So there's a whole schizophrenic nature about that. And then, a good few accounts, like maybe 3 or 4 accounts. Not too many, because then you got the paradox of choice, and then you don't ever know what to do. And then they're all mishmashed into each other eventually anyway. But yeah, have a handful of accounts. My recommendation.
So listen, you guys don't need publicity from me, but what do you got? I'll have links obviously to your channels in the show notes, but what do you got going on right now that you want people to know about, Dave?
I got going on what I'm staring in front of me. I'm looking at you guys. I'm looking at Uncle Adam. I'm wearing his T-shirt, even though this isn't video recorded.
Pachow.
Pachow, which I love. It's one of my favorite T-shirts. It makes me feel much stronger than I actually am. So it does that.
It's because the sleeves come up high.
It fits nice. Yeah, it fits a nice fit.
Yeah, looking studly there.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So Mini Wargamer Dave, the just move. Get out there and just be more active. Right? Like,
listen,
if you have a thought to
need to. I'm looking at you and I'm like, I got to get moving again.
You don't need a routine necessarily to just move, period. If you get a thought to do 10 squats on the spot, do it. Right? The body records it. The body remembers it. You don't have to keep track. It's just, it's all good. And especially us, getting on in age where mobility is paramount to our overall health. That'd be my recommendation. Just move and also socially interact. That'd be my thing that I would recommend. Studies show that longevity of health is tethered to quality of friendships and quality of relationships. And so even the small interactions with strangers, saying hi to people, saying thank you, looking them in the eye, those tiny little interactions all add up over time and contribute to good mental health, in addition to the more personable, potent relationships that we have, which ideally is a life partner. If we're fortunate and lucky to have someone that walk through life and witness our lives with us. Just be grateful.
Your wife and I have spent a lot of time talking at Adepticon a couple years ago, and she's lovely and just absolute enjoyment to
she decides to stay with me for some reason.
I don't know why. Especially with that hideous visage here. Adam, what do you got going on, man?
Making videos every single Friday, every other Sunday generally.
Every other Sunday is you're streaming.
Yeah, every other Sunday show is what we call it.
Yeah.
Like it is generally, and it should be on track for quite a while now, because as it turns out, every other Sunday is gonna skip over Adepticon, so I won't have to break up the thing then. And I think also maybe Gen Con or something like that. But anyway, and then me and YouTube's paint technomancer Vincent Venturella.
Yeah.
We've been making games since we were real bored during the pandemic, and it's Snarling Badger Studios, and we've got another one that is going to come out in May.
Awesome.
And then we're going to have another one next May and another one after that in the next May, and we just keep putting them out, and they're generally miniature agnostic, very indie kind of games, more about storytelling and stuff like that, but they're still miniature games, still fun, and you can play them versus, you can play them co-op, and you can play them solo if you just want to give that a try too. So fantastic.
All right. You got to introduce me to Vincent. I've saying hi to him a couple times as we've been passing, but we've never sat down and chatted like the three of us have.
He's a wonderful human. He's very genuine.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I'm going to see you both at Adepticon.
Indeed.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Come by the booth.
How could I not? It's huge. It's huge. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I super appreciate it. As our listeners know, we have please leave us reviews on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. We have a great Facebook group for the time being. It'll remain even if I leave Facebook. I've created another account that'll just manage the Facebook group. And we have a Patreon that you can join. So, again, guys, thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy. I see it's getting dark where you're both at. And Adam will let you go get some dinner. But I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. All right, I'm here with Dave Taylor, longtime personal friend and friend of the show. With your partner, Jake, you guys do the Build, Paint, Play podcast. And Josh and I have been on that once, had a great time. More importantly, we've become good friends at Adepticon over the years and virtually. You've run several Kickstarters at this point.
Yep.
It's funny. I was talking to somebody. I was talking to somebody recently, Dave, and I'm like, "Oh, Dave Taylor," and they're like, "I don't know who that is." I'm like, "What? Like, what are you crazy?" So
I love it.
I had to educate them. Dave, the reason I'm having you on just for this little short interview is I want to talk about your current Kickstarter that is going on, which is 28 Collected. And I became aware of this like Inquisitor 28 movement. Geez, I think way back when maybe Jeff was even on the show. So like years and years and years ago. But it's kind of morphed into beyond just Inquisitor 28 or Inc 28, INQ 28. And what that was when Inquisitor originally came out, it was 54 millimeter models.
those were obviously no longer around or easily accessible. And so people made rules or scaled them down to a 28 millimeter game at that point, because those models were more available. Tell me in your words, like what has the Inquisitor 28 or just 28 community become? And then why did you decide to do this project? And we'll talk about what that project is in just a second.
Sure. So yeah, it's been great. Like working on this project has meant that I've been able to explore it a lot further. I've been keeping an eye on the Inc 28 scene, all the cool stuff being done. But what I always sort of liken it to is, so people took a setting, like an inquisitorial setting, the 40K universe, really. Mm-hmm. I always describe it as like the dark corners of the 40K universe. It's not on a battlefield. It's in a hive city somewhere. It's in the slums, or it's in a palace, whatever it might happen to be. But it's the dark corners. It's inquisitors exploring, rooting out heresy, arguing amongst themselves, branding people as heretics. It's a whole bunch of stuff that
all that good stuff.
All that good stuff that we read, like Dan Abnett stories that we read in Malleus and Xenos and that kind of thing. But the concept there really is that there was people taking their own, taking something and making it their own, using their own initiative, their own creativity, and telling the story was the important part. Mm-hmm. You told the story through gaming, or told the story through making miniatures, and as other people became involved and excited by that kind of thing, it started to expand and grow. And as a movement, you're right, the movement is really the 28 art movement. Mm-hmm. Now, mm-hmm. where it's about people creating art, be it miniatures, be it 2D art, be it other sculptural sort of things, be it performance art in the way of gaming, be it writing, whatever it happens to be. It's about people keeping pushing those boundaries. It's people designing games in a grimdark setting, not necessarily 40K, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But trying something a little bit different. It's things like the 28 moniker gets sort of attached to a lot of different games, like Turnip 28, for example, is a sort of bizarre fantasy / World War I mired in mud kind of game where people worship root vegetables.
Okay.
You could just call it turnip, but it doesn't really say much.
Turnip
when you say
40K. Okay,
turnip
got
28.
It. Turnip 28, yeah.
Turnip 28 means it's part of that concept, that idea of telling stories, pushing the boundaries, having fun, not getting too sort of caught up in anything, but everything's about telling the story. So there are games like Apple Picking 28, which is not a combat game at all. It's a game about picking apples.
Right.
But it's in that, sort of grim, dark world where these apples are probably going to kill you. But it's just something that's different.
Right.
But it's all came from the 28 moniker is still there really because it came from that Inquisitor 28, the
right.
28 kind of vibe. But everybody's bringing their own passion, their own set of skills to the table. So a grimdark, through a grimdark lens. Through a grimdark lens, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it, right? Like everything kind of feels inspired by the works of like John Blanche and those kinds of things, where it's like it may be. A good example of this would have been at Nova, where they had the Alice in Wonderland kind of diorama painted up in the painting thing, but it was kind of like a grim, dark version of that.
Yeah, the White Rabbit was wearing armor and wielding a big sword. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely that kind of thing where it's taking that different look, it's mashing things up, it's creating new things, and it's about celebrating that creativity. Mm-hmm. So
Trench Crusade would kind of fit into this.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Type
it's
of
definitely come out of that. So, Mike Francina is the artist and the creative mind behind Trench Crusade. All of the art his art is very definitely inspired by John Blanche and a lot of other fantastic artists like Ian Miller, for example. Mike said that, and he's created these things. He's a concept artist for video games.
Yeah.
And some of the concept art for that he's done for Trench Crusade was a little bit too dark for some of the dark video games that he was working on, like Diablo and that kind of thing.
It's bad when a video game is like, hey, listen.
Well, when a dark game with the name like Diablo.
Yeah. That's too dark for us.
Dark for us. But James Sheriff, who did some of the first sculpts and is an integral part of the Trench Crusade team, he was one of the founders of 28 Magazine,
right?
Which is sort of the next step for us to talk about. So James has been involved in the sort of the grim dark aspect. James has been a sculptor for a long time. Always loved backing his Kickstarters and getting his miniatures and that kind of thing. But I think it was in 2022, maybe 2021, he started working with Mike Francina to create the Trench Crusade line. But even further back in 2018, beginning of 2018, he had a chat with some folks like the Wire brothers, Adam, Eric, and Greg Wire, who were here on the East Coast of the US. Alexander Winberg, who's in Finland, and a couple of other folks. He sort of pulled together a team, and they created the magazine, an online magazine called 28.
Which is interesting. I didn't realize Ed Brown, our friend Ed Brown, is working on that too. I imagine in an editorial capacity, he's an editor.
Yeah. So I think Ed was on there for he worked as an editor on there from issues 3, 4, and 5.
Nice.
But it's as well, just like the 28 movement, which is everybody bringing their particular skills and collaborating and creating. The magazine is very much like that as well. So,
you know what the vibe it gives me, Dave, to interrupt you for a second.
Oh, no, to go for it.
It kind of gives me like there was the magazine Heavy Metal.
Right.
It kind of gives me like a heavy metal view of like the grim dark universe. Like that's kind of the feel I get when I flip through like 28 magazine, or I look at the articles and the artwork in it. It's just so eclectic sometimes that it's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that kind of, it's that, again, it's telling the stories, and Heavy Metal told a lot of stories through art, and was the fantastic artists that they were putting their stories into these wonderful pieces. And I think that magazine in particular would have been one that influenced a lot of people who are contributing to 28 magazine.
Wouldn't surprise me.
No, not at all. But yeah, so the guys, Team 28, have had a whole range of people over the years. I think we've I can't remember exactly, but I know I'm just scrolling through the Kickstarter at the moment. So what have we got there? 9. So 17 people that we've got listed on the page there, who over the years have had different roles in the magazine. They are, as I said, it's eclectic, collaborative sort of thing. It's kind of anarchic at times. Everybody's a volunteer, and
it's done for the love of it.
Exactly.
Nobody there's making a ton of money off of it.
Nobody's making any money. It's a free online magazine.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely about the passion, and it's about. I mean, one of the aspects about it as well is that it's about creating the magazine itself is a piece of art.
Yeah, it really is.
So it's been super exciting to work with these guys and take a look back through all of the issues. The Team 28 came to me and said, okay, here are the articles that we'd like to include. I guess we should mention what.
So I was going to say, so let's, before you jump to that, like, so what is 28 collected here?
Right. So 28 collected. I mentioned, sorry, I realized as well that I got a bit ahead of myself. I mentioned 2018, James talked with the folks. They put out the first issue, I think, in 2019, second issue, 2020. It's almost like a kind of an issue a year.
Okay.
Maybe bookended a year, that kind of thing. But they've done 6 issues of 28 magazine. They've also done, each of those issues is 180, 200 pages in that sort of.
Yeah, they're not
realm.
small.
No, there's a lot of information in each one of them. They've done 3 issues of the International Women's Day, where each issue is exclusively women who are creating
Nice.
content in the space. And they have a another sort of zine style thing called Skulls, which is all very much a comic book graphic novel kind of style approach. So it's everybody who works in that genre or that medium putting it forward. Again, storytelling in that through a grimdark lens. So 28 collected, right from the start of 28 magazine, people like myself were like, oh, this is fantastic. When can I get a printed copy? And they're like, oh no, it's just a free online magazine.
Right.
I'm like, hey, okay, that's a shame. Each time it come out, I'd download it, I'd look through it, I'd read it, and be excited. And then I'll also ask them, when are you doing a printed copy?
Right.
So probably about this time last year, so February 2024, Alexander and the Wire Brothers approached me to work with them to do a collection. So to take basically the bunch of articles from the first 6 issues of 28 magazine and create a printed version. I mean, they're going, when are you doing a printed version? And for my sins, I now get to do it. Get to work with them. But yeah, so we've been working over the last year to put together this sort of very curated collection, which has some very focal interviews. So we've got John Blanche, we've got Ian Miller, Andy Chambers, Trish Carden. We've got reports from specific events like the Mordheim 2019 event, which was for the 20th anniversary of Mordheim. Alexander Winberg ran that.
That's very exciting to me. Yeah.
We've got the Rod of Hondius, which was an event that Bill Ford ran in Richmond, I believe. Vastarian, which was an event that I went to last November, which was organized by the Wire Brothers. Term, and it was another one run by Anna Polanchuk, who I worked with on the 3rd volume of The Art of. She ran a fantastic event. She ran it a couple of years in a row, I think, in Croatia. So there's a report on that.
And for those who don't know, the Art of books are where you've collected various artists' stories and artwork that they've done, which is all miniature based. And you've done this over several volumes, and the names in those books people would recognize, like they are well known within the 40K community and painting community. Yeah,
absolutely. I've got volumes 10, 11, and 12 are about to fulfill now, and we're actually fulfilling at the moment. And then April or May, we'll run the Kickstarter for volumes 13, 14, and 15.
Wow.
Which would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have all my painting in there. Hey, don't laugh so hard.
Oh, no. I didn't mean it that way. But no. Anyway, but loads of great stuff in the book that goes through from things that people like Mordheim that people would recognize and understand, and like easily understand, and then it leads you through the path of that expansion of the 28 community
Yeah.
into sort of movement, all the way through to there's a piece or there's an article by Giovanni De Paul, who was Italian, and he's an Italian artist who works in an art studio, and a lot of his art involves taking Warhammer plastic miniatures, assembling them, and then assembling them into something different.
Yeah.
Like elaborate headdresses.
Oh, wow.
Or a cutlery set, or a pair of dueling motorcycle helmets.
Wow.
Again, it's taking that, it's that artistic creativity and taking it,
Letting it spin.
Extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's how far can I push this? What can I keep doing?
Yeah.
So loads of great things that with that thread of storytelling all the way through it. So miniatures, art.
This book really appeals to me, especially right now. I've recently become a fan of the Grimdark Compendium online, which is the YouTube channel, and I actually just bought a bunch of their villainy inks. I'm not trying to pitch those. Like, I haven't tried them yet. I just bought them. They just arrived the other day. I need to get some spirits.
Some mineral spirits.
I ordered that because I'm waiting for that to arrive. But they have like this reductive technique for painting models that I want to try out to get kind of this more grim looking kind of, Space Marines, right? I'm playing around with it. So I'm looking at experimenting into that kind of field. And this type of thing is absolutely what sent me in that direction. So, This is awesome. I mean, the book is going to be over 300 pages, like 320
pages, yeah, at least 320. We've just today we passed the stretch goal where we're going to do a gatefold. So the magazine has 2 like staff artists.
Yeah,
I say staff. Nobody's getting nobody gets paid,
but they're regular. Yeah,
regular illustrators. So if an article needs an illustration, Alexander, the creative director, will contact one of the guys, either Boris or Martin. And Martin did this fantastic sort of processional piece that we're going to put in there as a gatefold. So our latest stretch goal that we reached today was to fund that.
Awesome.
Cool gatefold sort of thing, a fold out. And it's fantastic for me as well, because that's something I've never done in one of my books. I've published 15, but I haven't done a gatefold yet. So this is a great opportunity for me to express my art, which is creating these books.
And the cover's by John Blanche. Pretty sweet.
Which is fantastic. So we're very excited about that. The Godfather of Grimdark.
There you go.
Which is fantastic. And yeah, there's, as I said, there's 17 members of Team 28, but contributor-wise in the book, we've got, I think there's 47 contributors. Mm-hmm. Which is pretty wild. We've got loads of, obviously 40, we've got 47, I think we've got 49 articles in there. Loads of wonderful stuff.
It's going to be fantastic. So the reason I wish we'd talked to you earlier, because there, as we said before, there's only 4 days to go in the Kickstarter, but this won't release until literally the last day of the Kickstarter. So as of the time people are listening to this, hopefully they're listening to this the day it came out, you have today to go back it. You said there will be a pledge manager opening, though, that people may be able to do late pledges.
Yeah. So we wrap up on Tuesday, the 11th. I think in about 2 weeks after that, we'll have our Backer Kit Pledge Manager will open, which will open up a pre-order store, so people can jump on there and pre-order the book. We've got a pretty quick turnaround on this one, because someone will say, well, it's nice and easy. You've got all those articles already done.
It still requires formatting and layout and work. There's a ton of work that goes into people don't realize.
All of the, actually, because it's been made for an online publication, so many of the images were on there at 72 DPI.
Yeah, not high enough quality for print. Yeah.
print. Yeah, we printed 300 DPI, so I needed to go back and probably I'd say probably half the articles I needed to request new or original photos from the artists.
Yeah.
But we're at the point where essentially every single page is ready to go. I think at the end of February, we're going to be sending it off to the printers.
Wow.
We just had to up my order this week because of how well the Kickstarter is going.
Yeah.
So excited about that. But yeah, it'll be pretty quick turnaround. At the moment on the Kickstarter, I think I'm saying July, but we might
September.
It says September.
September 2025 is the date.
There we go. So I'm hoping that maybe July.
There you go. Ooh.
Don't tell anyone. But yeah,
Under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
Well, listen, every other one that you've delivered on has been just fantastic. I love adding to my collection. I've backed this. So I know Josh backed it too. We were just talking about it. I think Josh and Campbell and I were chatting about it today, and I know that they've backed it too. We're all very excited about it. So this is fantastic stuff. I'll put a link in the show notes directly to the Kickstarter. And if you're listening to this and it's too late to help back the Kickstarter, you know that there's the late pledge coming. So they'll be able to jump in on that. But Dave, this is, I mean, as soon as I saw it come up, I was like, of course, like this makes complete sense to do this, to do this book. This will be fantastic. So, best of luck. I know it's already funded and stuff. Best of luck with the delivery. You never know. You never know. But so far, so good. So great stuff, man.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining. We'll talk soon.
Have a good one.
This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.